Can I just bang on the...
Is that really the time?
Okay. Formal meeting, Board of Education for June 28th is called to order. Welcome, everybody. The meeting is being televised live. Items that will be voted on this evening have been posted as required by state law. Director Rosen is absent this evening. Ms. Husen, do we have student testimony?
We do. We have 6. We have Tanisha Bishop and Zach McKay.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Okay, I will begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Tanasia Bishop, and I'd like to share with all of you some of my experience at Rosemary Anderson High School. But before, let me back up a bit. As a freshman at Jefferson High School, classes were so large that my teachers didn't notice the missing student, me. Eventually, I got into some serious trouble from skipping classes and had to pick a new school. I picked Rosemary Anderson High School because of its I picked Rosemary Anderson High School due to its convenient location, and I actually ended up finishing my high school career there because I adored the manageable classroom size. I was able to get the one-on-one help I really needed. At Rosemary Anderson High School, I became an engaged student. I was eager to learn and ready to take on each assignment. I participated in Leadership Academy all 4 years and joined student council, making activities such as yoga, drama, and even an unheard of prom for an alternative high school possible for future Rosemary Anderson High School students. Throughout Rosemary Anderson High School, I was fortunate enough to be a part of several internships where I was... Sorry, I'm very nervous right now.
No problem.
Through Rosemary Anderson High School, I was fortunate enough to be a part of several summer internships and work readiness programs where I've learned skills from great customer service to facilitating events. Because of Rosemary Anderson High School, I have an exceptional work experience. During my time at Rosemary Anderson High School, I definitely took advantage of the available resources, and I still do. Since I'm a Rosemary Anderson alumni student, I'm offered support with homework, transportation, and work readiness and overall moral support up until I'm 25. I'm currently continuing my studies at PCC and plan to transfer to PSU, where I will join the social work program and earn a master's. With my degree, I would love nothing more than to return to POIC and support them just as they've supported me. With that said, I would like to thank you, Portland Public Schools, for investing in our alternative schools and programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, my name is Zachary McKay. Like Tanasia, I'm also a graduate from Rosemary Anderson High School. But prior to joining Rosemary Anderson High School, I was a freshman, and I was homeless and on the verge of dropping out. I was very unmotivated to even complete school, even show up. I kind of made a promise to my mom because she moved me out of state that if we'd move back to Oregon, Portland specifically, that I would look into attending an alternative high school to seek out resources. Luckily, I found Rosemary Anderson High School, and right away they brought me in, got me engaged in mentor program. I also, with Tanasia, joined the leadership program, and currently now I'm a peer mentor myself for future graduates from the school. They got me involved in student council. I ended up graduating not only on time but with honors. And then right away I started at PCC. I'm first generation to even attend college. Actually, I believe I'm first generation to even earn my high school diploma. Just recently, the past few days, I found out I actually graduated PCC.
Yay.
Thank you. I earned my associate's degree in science, which I'm very proud of. It's still sinking in right now, but I'm PSU bound. I plan on continuing my bachelor's degree, potentially my master's degree in civil engineering. But only because of the support of Rosemary Anderson was I even able to, have a dream to do something like this, because without them, I myself wouldn't be here to this day. I'm 25 right now, and they're still supporting me. I go to them for help, resources, and they've never let me down. So I'd like to also thank you guys for your support, for supporting Rosemary Anderson High School and all alternative programs. Sorry, that's a crazy word. You can tell I'm not a rapper, so.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Thank
you.
you. very much.
Congratulations really to both of you. Next. Next, we have Isabel Crozier and Maddie Cruz.
That's kind of what I figured. All right, welcome.
Hello, my name is Carl, or that's the name I go by. I'm gonna talk about Open School North. When I transferred to Open School 2 weeks into the school year, I was dealing with social anxiety and acceptance issues at my old school, Sabin. I'm a trans boy and needed a place to learn that was also accepting of my transition. I found that at Open School. Open-mindedness and respect of others are some of the ground rules there. Jesse, my advocate, started using my preferred pronouns right away, and so did all the other staff and teachers. Mike even offered to take me to SMERC, basically an LGBT boys and girls club. I feel very fortunate to have had the chance to begin my transition at Open School. I don't feel I could have stayed in school anywhere else.
Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing
Thank
your
you very
story.
much.
And lastly, we have Carl Temple and Carly Jo Shulikoff.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My name is Carly Jo Shulikov. I'm a graduate of Mount Scott Learning Center. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my story in support of Mount Scott and other contracted community-based programs serving Portland Public Schools. Growing up, both my parents were addicts. They were addicted to heroin. They had gambling issues. They were both alcoholics. And there was little support around my education. And it was the beginning of my 8th grade year that I found myself struggling to learn in a large public school environment. I wasn't getting the individual support that I needed at my previous school, and I found myself needing a place like Mount Scott. I needed a place with, a smaller, quieter learning environment. Getting that one-on-one time with my teachers at Mount Scott was something new to me, and it definitely helped me grow. The curriculum was really engaging, and I felt connected to the adults in my life for the very first time. And having those connections with my teachers was really special. Throughout the encouragement of my teachers and being in the Mount Scott community, I began to see myself as a really capable person, a capable student, and a capable human being. The school helped me succeed not only academically, but also personally and professionally. I started working for U.S. Bank when I was 18 years old, and since then I've received a couple promotions. I've been there about 5 years, and I'm now the assistant branch manager of a branch in downtown Portland. I really love my job. I love dealing with customers day in and day out, and I love being the face of the company. I'm no longer ashamed of where I come from, because where I come from is from Mount Scott. I was taught the perfect example of the person that I wanted to be, and I'm now a reflection of the staff at Mount Scott, and I couldn't be more proud. So what Mount Scott does matters, and it changes lives, and it's definitely changed mine.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.
that it? Okay, so, Katie, would you like to give your grand finale
I would.
report?
Thank you. Being student representative on the PPS school board has been an eye-opening experience. I was the first junior to be appointed in this position, and although it has been a challenge, I am very glad I was given the opportunity to be the voice of tens of thousands of students in our district. As we all know, the school year has been an important year for Portland Public Schools. Many issues were brought to the board's attention, and these decisions affected every community. Lead and radon levels, the Grotto Choir performances, boundary changes, climate change education, and the upcoming dress code policy decision are all matters that the board has gotten media attention for, and I'm looking forward to how our district will continue to address these very important topics. This school year was also an exciting year for our schools. Many schools earned PIL and state titles, and for the first time in history, 2 PPS high schools competed in the We the People National Constitution Team competition in Washington, D.C., and both placed in the top 3. And countless other class, club, and personal achievements of PPS students and staff were awarded this year. It has been a very eventful year for Portland Public Schools, and I'm so proud of our district. I would also like to reflect on my personal experience as a board member and a leader of the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee. It has been very educational to learn how the district and the board operate. As a board, I think we wasted a lot of valuable time this year. We need to remember it's our job to do what's best for the students of our schools, and that everything we decide affects each student. Board members should be above making snide comments to each other and should be acting like role models while we work. You guys are all amazing people who care deeply about our kids, and it's painful for me to see you not be able to work together. As student rep, I have felt that Super SAC has gotten pushed to the district's back burner. Our meetings that were scheduled were rescheduled many times due to new events planned at the last minute, and it constantly felt like everything else was considered more important than the students. I hope as we go forward, Super SAC will be more of a priority for the superintendent, and that the student rep will be fully supported and given clear communication throughout their whole term. The first time I met my fellow board members and the district staff, I was extremely nervous, but as soon as I met everyone, my nervousness faded. I have never been in this big of a position before, and because of this opportunity, I have grown more confident in my abilities. Listening to student testimony and community members weighing in on important decisions, hosting meetings and forums for Super SAC, and providing reports at board meetings are all important roles of the student rep. Jefferson's High School's Alima Bradley will be the next student representing more than 49,000 students. I am confident that she will provide great leadership to the district. Alima, I will to you my seat on this dedicated and passionate board and the willpower to stay up until the early hours of the morning for those long board meetings. Sitting on the board this year has been a lot of fun, and I'm forever grateful for all the people who have supported me this year. Board members, I thank you for being so welcoming. I really enjoyed working with you and getting to know each and every one of you. You are not getting rid of me completely, though, as I will continue to be a member of Super SAC and DBROC throughout my senior year. Thank you all so much.
Yay.
Thank you, Katie, and we are really going to miss you. And I would encourage you to give Alima, really specific suggestions about how we can strengthen Super SAC and how we can support Super SAC and make it more connected to the work that we do as a board and make their work a priority for the whole district.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll also say, Katie, thank you so much for your leadership, and it is great to have you back again next year. But I also just want to acknowledge your efforts to get involved in things like boundary, being the representative on other things as part of your role on Super SAC, and being the student rep on the board. You immersed yourself in really significant issues and worked to be a voice there in a really good way. So thank you for that.
Thank
and
you.
we just did the passing of the torch in my
Yeah.
office a few moments ago. And the gift from all of us to Katie is sitting at her seat. So I'm not walking over to deliver it because we've already delivered it to her. But thank you so
Thank
much
you
for your
all.
service. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'm not sure what you did to Tom to make him have you sit by me the whole year. But many snide comments down here, I'm sure there were quite a few. So I'm chastened by you, but I really enjoyed it personally, and I really think you're a wonderful person and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And I was just gonna say, I'm glad you're continuing on DBRAC because I get to work with you.
Yes.
So thanks.
Yeah, thank
It's been
you.
great.
Thank you guys all so much.
Any other comments?
Thanks, Katie. Do appreciate all the work you did. And I'm sorry I'm not going to be on DBRAC with you.
Oh.
And Katie, I'll just say also, thank you so much. I think you represented your constituency with class, and when you spoke, it was right to the point, but in a way that everybody heard. So those are invaluable tools that the world will be better for because of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to keeping track. All right. All right.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Public comment.
We have a total of 9, and our first 2 speakers are Sharon Ferreira and Kelly Cook.
Welcome.
I'm so excited to share my story and passion for Mount Scott Learning Center. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of Mount Scott Learning Center tonight. My name is Sharon Ferreira. I am the parent of a Mount Scott Alternative High School graduate, Marcus Ferreira. I would like to convey to you how much Mount Scott Alternative High School has made a difference in Marcus's life. Marcus had attended Portland Public Schools since kindergarten through high school, as did his 2 older sisters, who are both graduates from Franklin High School. One of them's sitting back here. She's a teacher at Troutdale Elementary School now. I'm speaking to you today from years of experience as I have parented students for a total of 20 years through the Portland Public Schools. I applaud the Portland Public School District for providing a well-rounded, solid educational foundation to thousands of students in this city. Back to Marcus. When Marcus started his freshman year of high school, he lost his way. He, like many students, did not fit into the box of mainstream high school. His struggles were not academically, but rather motivational. He became a master of flying under the radar. His attendance was sketchy and he never turned in any homework assignments, so as a result of this, he failed all of his classes his freshman year. He eventually completely dropped out of school that year. As I reflect back on those dark days, I find myself in tears remembering the frustrations and struggles of trying to find a way to get my son through his high school years to a graduation day. I was so desperate for help. I had resorted to looking into boot camps to send him to. But finally, a counselor recommended the Mount Scott program to us. I took Marcus to an enrollment interview that summer and watched in amazement as he sat there engaged in conversation with the counselor, learning about the program at Mount Scott. I could tell he wanted to be a successful student, but he always seemed to get lost in the daily shuffle. He was accepted into the Mount Scott program, and from the first days of school to the final day of graduation, the staff at Mount Scott was incredibly supportive and dedicated to the success of each student there. The culture of community, acceptance, and accountability are core values at the Mount Scott Learning Center that every student there will learn and benefit from. If you read some of the student testimonials, every one of them speaks of a sense of family at Mount Scott, where they feel accepted from the staff members and all of their student body. As I reflect back on the memories and the situations of those 4 years, I am overwhelmed with gratitude to all of the staff that played a part in Marcus's success in completing high school. Marcus's experience at Mount Scott Learning Center was truly a life-changing direction for him. I would like to thank this school board for providing this alternative program to students and families out there struggling with similar issues. The program works in producing accomplished, successful, graduating high school students. They are prepared for the challenges of life, whether that be vocational or on to college. I can attest to this as I recently experienced one of the proudest moments of my life, watching my son Marcus walk across the stage at the University of Oregon graduation. He received his Bachelor of Science in Public Relations from the Department of Journalism just 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jody Hancock and Brad Nelson.
Hello.
My name is Jody. I'm a parent of an incoming 4th grader at Rigler Elementary. I am here tonight to talk with you about the issues surrounding the single-track English only in our school. A fellow parent, Betsy, spoke with you 2 weeks ago about our school. I am here to reiterate what she spoke about, show parent support, and put out a few ideas to be looked into further by you, the board that we elected to ensure our kids receive the well-rounded education that they deserve and we as parents demand. When Betsy presented to you on the 14th of June, Julie Esparza Brown did talk about having had spent a fair amount of time observing at Rigler this year, agreeing with us that behavior is a huge issue at our school and something does need to change. She did mention the idea of implementing the behavior model PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. This is an intervention that Rigler is already using with complete fidelity. It is necessary to gauge what is in place at each school before implementing an intervention that has been adopted already. We need more than a packaged behavior program. The issues that we need to address are the impacts of trauma, poverty, and systemic racism in a co-located single-strand program. When children come into our school at a level that does not allow Spanish immersion as a choice or they do not choose Spanish immersion, these issues become magnified as they are automatically forced into one class. To remind you, our Spanish immersion program has 2 to 3 classes for each grade and a single track English only. There are 2 main issues that I want to address with you tonight. As you well know, there are many issues that come with a single track English only. You have heard from Betsy about what specifically those issues are: overcrowded classroom, higher number of behavior problems in each classroom, teachers unable to teach due to behavior classroom management issues, teachers unable to collaborate in each grade, and bottom line, all children being able to receive an education in a learning environment they deserve. I am going to speak personally for a moment. Our daughter came into Rigler at 3rd grade last year. We felt slightly behind due to classroom management behavior issues at a different school. As she started the year at Rigler, we were hopeful that she would be able to catch up. But as we quickly realized, this was going to be very difficult given the situation of the single-track English. With almost half of the students in her classroom having IEPs and all with very difficult behavior issues, it became clear that this was going to be a challenging year. Throughout the year, we had several discussions with our principal, the teacher, the school counselor, the restorative justice counselor, and other parents. It became apparent that the issue is single-track English only. I'm using my daughter as an example, but these are issues that are present throughout our school and are affecting all the students and their learning ability, immersion and English only alike. We must provide the appropriate services that these students deserve. Our daughter, we feel, is coming into 4th grade on the lower end as a result of a classroom that was almost impossible to learn in. As a side note, we are losing 4 out of 6 of our English only teachers this year, 4 of our strongest. They have left to explore opportunities, classrooms, schools, where they are able to actually teach the students. Of course, the obvious solution is to add a class for each grade level, and this is ultimately what we are asking for. We also realize that this may not be a realistic request or a goal for our school. As the parents and teachers have discussed this at length, we have also discussed the possibility of blending classrooms, 2 classrooms for each blend. For example, 2 2-3 classrooms and 2 4-5 classrooms. This would allow for collaboration between the teachers, better blending of personalities of students with extreme behavior issues, collaboration between the younger and older students, and most importantly, a more positive learning environment. Also, the administration must take a look at the current IEP situation on the English-only side and provide the services and the staff that is necessary. We as parents are demanding that these ideas get a closer look and serious discussions as solutions to ensure our children are receiving an education and learning to their potential. The other issue I want to bring to you tonight is inequality of the immersion and English-only programs at our school. It has been discussed among teachers, staff, and parents that there are benefits that the Spanish immersion program receives that English-only does not. For example, a Spanish immersion social studies curriculum was purchased for the Spanish immersion teachers. The English-only did not receive such a curriculum or any kind of curriculum. The Spanish immersion program received Chromebooks for their classrooms. The English-only received nothing. The Spanish immersion program teachers are allotted time and hours for Spanish curriculum preparation. The English-only are not given this time. And most events or celebrations are of Latino in theme, leaving other cultures in our school unrepresented, as there are few celebrations involving other cultures.
Ma'am, are you about ready?
I'm in conclusion.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
I would like to implore you to take a very close look at the issues we raise and bring to you. These issues are not something we can shove under a rug or put on a list for later or next year. We have students that are falling behind each year because the students cannot teach. Each year falling behind makes every subsequent year so much more difficult for all involved. We need to make these changes now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to comment, Paul?
Sure.
So I'd like to comment on that.
I have copies. Okay, good.
So first of all, as you portrayed, so I just want to kind of clarify a couple of things. I'm not saying that PBIS is the answer at all, and also it's not a prepackaged program. It's a framework that has to be developed by the school and the community of the school.
Okay.
But beyond that, I mean, you bring up a good point, and I do want to say that we are looking at and discussing the issue of single track within a dual language school. And in the Teaching and Learning Committee, we will be, we're looking to see when we can calendar that, putting that on the agenda. But the discussion is also looking at, as we're adopting the new literacy work and curriculum, looking at the achievement, the literacy achievement of all kids. So Wrigler is on our list. We're looking across schools. So I don't want you to think that we haven't heard. I mean, there's not going to be an easy solution, but we're really working on it, and so watch for the Teaching and Learning Committees in July or August when we will have more discussion of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Our next speakers are Virginia Lafort and Rachel Linder.
I think we're speaking together, so should we go one at a time?
Yes. I mean, both come on up and then speak one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
I have a photo.
My name is Rachel Linder, and I'm the parent of two kids at Portland Public School, a son at Chapman, and my daughter, who's 13, is at West Sylvan. And first, I just want to say thank you for your consideration of updating the dress code policy. I think it is time, and I'm here today to give voice to my daughter, who is here, did not want to come up and participate, but she does. I have her permission, consent to share a little bit about her history and her experience this year with the dress code. When she was in 6th grade at the East Campus, she was diagnosed with anorexia, and her doctors recommended that she stop all activity, and including school and sports. And she was admitted into a local eating disorder clinic with other children. She successfully completed that. She missed 3 months of school. She did go back and finish 6th grade, and I'm proud to say that she's worked so hard to get to a healthier place, not only mentally but physically, and she's growing and developing beautifully, and I'm so proud of her. She has a good team of therapists and doctors that still work with her. A few months ago, I got a call from one of the vice principals at West Sylvan, leaving a message saying that they dress coded my daughter. And you can see from the picture, that's her after school at the bus stop. So they said she was not following PPS protocol and she was not dressing appropriately. They pulled her out of her class and she missed more than an hour of education to be talked to about her choice of clothing. And I have a really hard time looking at that photo, even finding what it is that's wrong with her, but it's sending such a wrong message to our young people, girls especially, that something is wrong with her. And I've worked so hard to teach her that she is okay and she is beautiful just the way she is. And I think updating the policy now it's timely and it's needed, and it's going to give a voice to especially my daughter, who was so upset that day when she was called out by her authorities at school. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Virginia Lafort, and I'm a community member and the parent who first alerted PPS to the presence of deteriorating lead-based paint at Alameda Elementary in October of 2013. I'm here tonight because I wanted to speak with you before you make any decisions about how to proceed with lead abatement, be it water or paint, throughout the district. In particular, I wanted to dispel any doubt that there is paint in the air particulate at Portland Public Schools. As you're most likely aware, the greatest health hazard related to lead is the dust originating from lead-based paint. It's pretty easy for the average person to imagine how lead poisoning in water works. You have lead solder, lead pipes, the water sits in there, it leaches, you drink it. It's very, very easy to imagine. However, it's not as easy to imagine dust generated by snapping a piece of lead-based paint off of the side of a building, sliding your hand on a leaded handrail, or throwing a ball against a lead-contaminated play court floor. Recently, I went through at least 100 emails between PPS and myself related to the lead paint at Alameda. I came across mold test results that had been conducted at my request due to concerns from other parents. While the mold levels weren't alarming, I flipped to the back of the report and looked at the air particulate data for the first time. These results, which you have in your hands, were emailed to every parent at Alameda as an assurance of a safe building. However, there is paint in every single airborne particulate sample. Considering that we know that the paint there was 1/3 lead by weight, it was 342,000 parts per million, the chances that there was no lead in the samples is basically zero. In fact, if you review the data on the first page, I kind of marked it up a little bit for you, 39% of all of the particulate was paint spheres and chips. I find that alarming. I have no idea how I missed it the first time around, especially when we were in the middle of this lead paint investigation at the time. So why am I bringing up something that happened 2 years ago? Because the stabilization of Alameda is incomplete and there was no cleanup done. The covered play court is still positive for lead. It took me about 30 seconds to find positive paint chips a couple of weeks ago. The metal posts by the garden are still positive for lead, completely deteriorated right by the gardens where the kids grow their plants to eat. The information was on the front page of the Sunday Oregonian, but still there's no action that's been taken. All of the areas are still accessible to children, and Y-Care is in session right now, so it's not like there aren't any kids running around on the playground. It's summer camp for kids.
Would you just repeat that sentence?
Oh God. That Y-Care is still in the building and has access to the grounds. So the whole neighborhood has access to the grounds. It's basically, it's like a park that we all care very deeply about. And again, these areas are still accessible to children. I'm almost done, I swear. So I want to say, as we move forward, and I definitely feel like we have made progress, the fact that we're even hearing about this regularly it's just huge that we're having this conversation. But it's imperative that PPS submits not only a risk assessment for each building, but a plan that involves the proper cleanup so our kids aren't sitting here 20 years from now having the same conversation with each other. I would ask that you start with Alameda due to the sheer volume of the paint, which your project manager called an emergency. I hope you'll consider that every dollar allocated later tonight takes us that much farther away from a permanent solution to the lead hazards in our schools. Please be careful with this money, and if contracts that are up for approval are not more important than removing lead from paint and water in our schools, please vote against them, if only for now, so that we as a community can trust that we're all on the same page and that it's safety first. Lead poisoning is so insidious because no level is safe, whether it's a couple of unrealized IQ points or, a stomach ache. I don't think any of us would make that deal on behalf of our kids. So, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Did you say that 39% of the particulates?
I did the math.
Hear that?
Yeah.
39% of the particulates in what
The
area?
library, which I'm guessing is probably because of the books and dust.
In the 39% of the particulates in the air?
Yeah, it looks
What
like
paint?
60,000, which the report identifies, 60,000 particulates. The report identifies those as dirt. 57,600 are paint spheres or chips. Just to compare to like human dander, that's 10,000. So it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So I think that this will be a really interesting review. It sure was for me. 22% inside the front office in the northwest end. 26% outside the building by the front entrance, and that's all kind of the same area. And actually, if you live in that neighborhood, that's the way the wind blows, literally. It blows right from that area, outside the building, right into the library and the offices. And also, I did highlight the crystalline particulates as well, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't sticking my foot in my mouth when I came here tonight, and talked to a friend who works for OSHA, and also when I know who owns a mold testing company here in Portland, to ask about, they actually brought up the crystalline particulate to me because it would warrant further testing because it could be silica or asbestos. So I don't know what happened to this report after it's sent out, but again, this was sent to every family at Alameda as an assurance of safety, and I don't think that any of us made it to, page 8? So.
Did they make in all your dealings back and forth with the school district, did we talk about the cost to take care of those particular lead paint problems at Alameda? Did you ever
Was
get
the
any?
cost brought up to me?
Did they ever say about how much it would cost to take care of that?
No, only that it was very expensive. The main structure was stabilized, but the play court, which was part of the original assessment, was left untouched. It was part of the, it was mentioned in the OHA report on behalf of the EPA. It's in the lead, I have the PPS's own lead test results in here as well, which also talk about the positive results in the play court. And I'm not sure which report it was, but I've been doing a little digging lately. Was it 2008? Was it the Magellan report that kind of ranks the different areas? The play court was listed as a 5, which I believe is the highest level, and it was recommended that impact-resistant material be installed, and that still hasn't happened. It's really dangerous. These kids are playing foursquare, wall ball, the kindergarten lets out right there. It's not a safe place, and it's my hope that with all of this information that maybe this can be an example for how to move forward for every school.
Is it the paint in which part of the outdoor court did they think? Is the paint on the walls? Are they talking paint on the ceilings?
Ceiling.
All
One of the
ceiling?
walls tested at 0, and then the ceiling tested positive, and the post tested positive.
So it's the ceiling, and the ceiling is dropping?
Right,
on
exactly.
the
And that's
play
where I
court?
found the lead chips was
And
on
we
the
didn't-
ground.
We haven't gone out and painted the ceiling?
It wasn't part of the the bid that was done for the project, and I think it was inline construction. It was only the original structure that was part of, the wood structure that was part of that project. And I'm sorry, you're probably not familiar with the school. The covered play court is stucco. It was a 1953 addition to the building. So I believe that when the work was done in Alameda, there were several other schools that were less money that were also done during that time. And I think that was done under the umbrella of them being wood-sided structures. And I suspect that the play court must have been excluded because it wasn't wood. That's the only,
But
I can't speak for.
in order to fix that situation, they would have to vacuum the play court and paint the ceiling? Is that all we're talking about? then?
Paint probably wouldn't work just because of the type of material. The best thing to do would probably just be to cover it up. That's considered abatement, just to cover it with another material. and exactly, vacuum
Something.
it up. Yep.
No one has ever
it's pretty
given
easy.
you, no one has ever given you a suggestion of what actually should take place out there to fix it?
No.
And what it would cost?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, both of you. Our next two speakers are Gabrielle Bolivar and Rick Reynolds.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Gabrielle Mercedes Bolivar. Superintendent Smith, PPS Board of Directors, and Student Representative, thank you for taking the bold action to approve the resolution to reopen Ockley Green Middle School. This is the first step of many that will begin the process of restoring middle grades programming and increase equitable access to educational opportunities for our students in the Jefferson cluster. As the parent of an incoming 7th and 8th grader at Ockley Green Middle, I've been impressed with our new principal, Renee Conler's accessibility, presence in our community, and with our children this week as he meets with each of our feeder schools to hear a student-first perspective on their vision for a middle school. When our community and PPS partner collaboratively, together we are better. Our work is not yet done, however. On June 24th, 2016, DBRAC submitted a briefing to Superintendent Carol Smith that stated under Section 5, Additional Guidance A, DBRAC requests that the superintendent introduce a resolution to the Board of Directors to formalize reopening of Harriet Tubman and Roseway Heights as middle schools for the 2017-2018 school year. This board-level action will support DBRAC's work by reducing community uncertainty around these decisions. I implore you to please introduce and pass this resolution today. The delayed vote has created unnecessary fear and uncertainty in our communities. SCI recently announced that they will be closing their charter middle school in anticipation of the reopening of PPS middle schools in Northeast Portland. Martin Luther King K-8 families have given emotional testimony to the PPS Board of Directors and at DBRAC town halls, imploring PPS to reopen Harriet Tubman Middle School, and students and staff testified to the sense of urgency and the proposed Roseway Heights Middle School feeders and the need to take action now for their middle school to reopen fall 2017. All of our students deserve an equitable access to a free, appropriate public education. All of our, regardless of the neighborhood where they live and regardless of the address. We are better together, and we are best when all of our students have access to an equitable education that is culturally responsive and appropriate and rigorous. In the same DBRAC memo under Guidance 2, develop standalone or balanced co-located sites for dual language immersion programs to resolve issues that exist at imbalanced neighborhood immersion schools. You have all heard testimony and received data that continues to highlight the inequities of co-located immersion programs and the impacts on the English-only neighborhood side. This should be urgency in prioritizing a solution that will not segregate students by language, ability, learning differences, or socioeconomics, as is happening right now. English neighborhood side staff and students are not receiving an equitable allocation of resources to meet the needs of their students. The incoming single English strand 5th grade at Beach, only one student passed the SBAC this year for math. Let me repeat, only one student passed the SBAC for math. An intervention must be done. Increasing the English strands from 1 to 2 is not going to stop the segregation by language, ability, learning difference, or socioeconomics and co-located language programs. I believe in and support language programs. My father came to this country as an unaccompanied minor refugee with his 2 siblings through Operación Pedro Pan, Operation Pedro Pan. It was the largest unaccompanied minor, 14,700, and put into foster homes. As Latino immigrants, they had to learn a new culture, language, and work through systemic racism and prejudice, as many of our students struggle through today. There's incredible value in DLI as an evidence-based best practice model. However, we should not be addressing one inequity by creating another. We must create sustainable programs that meet all of our students' needs. We are better together, and we are best when all of our students have access to an equitable education that is culturally responsive, appropriate, and rigorous. Thank you. I look forward to celebrating the board vote on the reopening of Harriet Tubman and Roseway Heights Middle Schools. Si se puede.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Rick Reynolds, and I am a native Portlander. I'm a product of the Portland Public School System. I went to school at William Clark Elementary, which is now, you call it the Creative Science School at Clark, John Marshall High School, and that prepared me to graduate from the University of Portland. And what I'd like to do tonight is I would like to take just a moment to thank the superintendent for the job that she has done the last 9 years. And I hope all the board members are aware of that as well, that there are thousands and thousands of grandparents like myself and parents in this city that are very grateful for what she's done. The transparency that she's shown in this lead issue, the transparency that she's shown with the water, the lead in the water, the lead in the paint, all of that stuff. And before people come in and complain to you and complain to her and demand her job, why aren't these same people down at City Hall in front of Charlie Hale's office? Because the city of Portland has been testing for lead in water 2011, 2012, and 2014. And by law, they're required to report that, and they haven't. And as far as schools go, I do have to use my glasses for this. And this was verified by the Oregonian. I did do that and online. There is nothing in state or federal law that requires schools to test drinking water for lead, to share the test results if they do test for lead, or even take action if they find lead. And this is something that the Oregon legislature is now looking into to try and make happen. But in the meantime, it's not the superintendent's fault. It's not any of your fault. And I feel like I still have a kind of a dog in the fight here because I've chosen grandchildren that are at school. My daughter, Courtney, that tragically passed away when she was a senior at Grant. She was 16, a young senior. And so all my life has been the Portland Public School, and that's 68 years. So thank you, Superintendent Smith. And thank you for all that you've done. And everybody should realize that.
Thank you.
And school board, please note that there are so many of us that are happy with her work, and we're sad that she's leaving a year from now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Steve?
Thank you.
I guess this has not, we can vote, this has not, I just can't pass up to not make a comment. We have one student who passed the SBAC. We have no idea why any of those children passed or didn't pass, because the SBAC doesn't give us any information that we can use, period. The Springfield School Board all passed a resolution saying that we needed to change the test because it's no good, and it isn't. And so it's nice. I mean, we're doing all this testing and spending millions of dollars, but it doesn't help us at all. We have no idea why that kid passed and the others didn't, because no one can look at the test and even see what the questions are. And yet, we're taking all that time, energy, and so forth. I just want people here who maybe hadn't heard that before. And next time testing comes up, you'll hear it again from me.
Thank you.
And and one thing I think too, don't stop doing everything else too. Get the schools ready for this fall, for the kids
Yeah.
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
last speaker is Joe Rowe.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
I am a teacher of computer science at Franklin High School. And I'm here today, not for the sake of me and the other teachers, but I'm here for the sake of students at Wilson High School, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Jefferson, Benson, Madison, Grant, and Cleveland, including Franklin. For those of you who don't know or weren't here a few weeks ago, several Franklin teachers put their jobs on the line. These are younger teachers, and they told their truth about what PPS is doing to Franklin. And it may come to you as a shock, but here's the opening shock for the audience. The Franklin building right now is in the middle of a 2-year remodel. In about 12 months, we'll be moving back into the Woodward building, and that Woodward building will be overcrowded by design. And PPS doesn't call it overcrowded by design. PPS calls this new world model the 100% utilization. It is a business practice, much like community college, where teachers are not allowed to have their own classroom, and they are compacted to save square footage. The building on Woodward that has been mostly demolished and rebuilt will have more square footage total, but far less square footage for classrooms. So this should be a shock. There's a rumor going around that when we move back to our brand new building after hundreds of millions of dollars, we will have to order portables. Now, I don't know if that rumor is true, but I keep hearing PPS abuse the words right size over and over again to tear apart schools, much like Vicki Phillips did when she came up with this bright, untested idea. Remember that. What PPS is doing with their 100% utilization model is a untested idea in the United States. I don't know anywhere in the world that schools are being designed with this model. Teachers are labeled self-serving if we advocate for students. What do students want? Katie, I hope you can respond to this. Students want to be listened to, they want answers, honest answers, and they want that repeated. This forum where I speak for 3 minutes and the button is up and you guys don't really respond other than Steve who does respond. This forum where I'm talking for 3 minutes is a sham of democracy. I speak for 3 minutes and nothing is done. So what we want the board and we want PPS to listen, respond honestly, and repeat that. Because when I started under this 100% use, I've been living under 12 months. When I started, I said, I'll give it a go, business model, sure. So we'll squeeze in, we'll save some money. And then I documented like 30 different reasons, which I can't go over because I'm running out of time. I'm not gonna go over those 30 reasons. What I am gonna say is that you can hear those 30 reasons if you come and talk to the Franklin graduating class of 2017. They will have seen 2 years in our Woodward building that was torn down, and they will see 2 years under this overcrowded by design model. So come talk to those students. They've seen both. And then come talk to us after we've been in the Woodward building another year. But to not talk to us is almost criminal. And just to warn the public, teachers took these complaints 3 years ago through the proper channels, through the district channels, and they were shut down. Instead of PPS listening and responding, PPS hired their PR staff, John Wilhelmy, people like John Isaacs, to tweet out and instead of fix the problem, use public engagement to change the public's perception of the problem. So I am not looking for applause. I'm looking for people to have a moment of silence so that this 100% utilization model does not impact Grant, which is going to be remodeled, and it does not affect the other schools. I'm all for best practices and changing things, but teachers and students have not been listened to. Talk to the students. Ask them how hard it is to move. Think of your freshman year in college. Think of your freshman year in high school and how unsettling that is to find where teachers are. Under this new model, your sophomore year will be just as unsettling because between every year in high school, everything will be different. Teachers no longer have a classroom. Everything is dynamic.
Thank you.
Pam, I see you nodding your head. Do you have something you'd like to say? Okay.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Houston, is that it?
That is it.
Okay, great. We will now have a first reading of our revised student dress code policy. Superintendent Smith, would you like to introduce this item?
Could I ask before we start, who is in charge of this in the district that's going to come up and talk to somebody else? Because I have a couple questions.
About the dress code?
Yeah, about dress
I'm about
code.
ready to introduce them.
Yeah, you're going to introduce them?
I'm going to introduce them,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
Apologies.
yeah.
I thought you were going to give it.
No, I'm going to introduce I'm going to introduce
Right.
Yang Dabolt, who is the program administrator who's one of the staff to our district dress code advisory committee that's been working over the past year, and I'm going to invite you to come on up, and other members of the committee, I believe, are going to participate in this presentation. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who served on this committee. I think this has been a pretty robust discussion, and we look forward to hearing the outcome of your work here tonight. Yang, over to you.
Great, thank you.
And actually, my one last thing is this did go before the Business and Operations Committee, I
Yes,
believe,
it
Paul,
did.
is this correct?
Yes.
And unanimously moved forward to the full board,
Yes.
correct? Yang.
Good evening. Tonight, I, along with members of the District Dress Code Advisory Committee, am presenting the recommendations on updating the student dress code policy. I'll go over our process, and then Ben Kiefer and Ellen Watmore will address our recommendations, followed by a closing statement by Sophia Carlson. In May 2015, students and parents testified at the board meeting that the current dress code policy unfairly targets female students and that the resulting discipline actions often take away learning time. The board supported updating the student dress code policy, and in September 2015, Robin Mack and I were asked to convene and facilitate the District Dress Code Advisory Committee. From the start, we felt it was important to have multiple perspectives involved in this work. This meant having a committee made of parents, students, teachers, and administrators representing grades K through 12 and meeting monthly to discuss how to update the student dress code. We decided that in order to properly assess the current policy and make our recommendations, we needed to get feedback from all of our stakeholders, students and families who must follow the policy, and our teachers and administrators who must enforce the policy. Furthermore, we applied our racial equity lens. We knew that we needed to reach out to the racial and ethnic groups that would be affected by this policy. We understood that this was not an easy issue to address. We wanted to have deeper conversations with our stakeholders in smaller sized focus groups. The purpose of the focus groups was to get feedback on the current policy and recommendations on how to update it. With the help of research and evaluation, we created 5 question prompts to start the conversations. We also used the questions to create Google Form surveys. Starting in February, Robin and I met with 11 focus groups, including students and families representing grades K through 12 and representing our racial and ethnic groups. In addition, committee members shared the Google form with students and families through email and on Facebook pages. Administrators provided feedback during a district-wide leadership meeting, and teachers gave feedback during designated school staff meeting times. All of this qualitative feedback from the focus groups and survey responses was then compiled and helped inform our final recommendations. Last Wednesday, at the Business and Operations Committee meeting, we were asked to add an implementation plan that includes why we are updating the dress code, a timeline for communication to all stakeholders, and expectations for the new policy. We'll work on this as a committee and have it ready by the July 25th board meeting. Before we read over the recommended policy and administrative directive, I would like to state that these recommendations are not intended to convey a message about PPS's views on any specific type of garment or style of garment, and that PPS and this committee does not recommend or endorse any form of garment. We encourage all families to decide what is appropriate for their children to wear to school within the guidelines of safety and equity. So, Ben?
And I'll start by reading the recommended policy. Student Dress and Grooming, Portland Public Schools, Portland, Oregon, 4.30.012-P. The responsibility for the dress and grooming of a student rests primarily with the student and his or her parents or guardians. Attire or grooming depicting or advocating violence, criminal activity, use of alcohol or drugs, pornography, or hate speech are prohibited. A student's attire or grooming should not be grounds for exclusion from his or her participation in school classes or programs or in school-related activities. If, however, the attire or grooming of a student poses a threat to the health or safety of any other person, the appropriate solution, as stated in the AD, will be followed. School-directed changes to a student's attire or grooming should be the last restrictive and disruptive, school-directed changes to a student's attire or grooming should be the least restrictive and disruptive to the student's school day. Any school dress code enforcement actions should minimize the potential loss of educational time. Administration and enforcement of the dress code shall be gender neutral and consistent with the PPS racial equity policy. This policy applies to all individual schools. Schools may not enact more restrictive or less restrictive dress and grooming codes. Questions about application should be directed to General Counsel.
Hello, my name is Ellen Watmore, and I'm a teacher at Wilson High School. I'm going to be sharing the revised dress code, specifically the administrative directive part 2, which is largely the piece that received the most revision. Almost the entirety of the rest of it remains unchanged. For the purposes of The administrative directive, the definitions are: 1, attire is clothing including outerwear, headwear, accessories such as scarves or jewelry, and shoes. Grooming is makeup, tattoos, and hairstyle. And dress code is a set of parameters determined by the district that describe standards for student attire and grooming. And the school uniform dress code is distinctive clothing style and/or specific colors selected by the school following a community process and worn by all students as a means of identifying them as members of the school community. Uniform dress codes may range from identical articles of clothing worn by all students, uniforms, to clothing similar in style and color worn by all students, uniform dress. So if you want to refer to page 2 of 6, the basic dress code. So minimum safe attire. Student attire and grooming must permit the student to participate in learning without posing a risk to the health or safety of any student or school district personnel. A, students must wear clothing including both a shirt with pants or skirt or the equivalent, for example, dresses, leggings, or shorts, and shoes. B, shirts and dresses must have fabric in the front and on the sides, under the arms. C, clothing must cover undergarments, waistbands, and straps excluded. D, fabric covering breasts, genitals, and buttocks must be opaque. E, hats and other headwear must allow the face to be visible to staff and not interfere with the line of sight of any student or staff. Hoodies must allow the face and ears to be visible to school staff. F, clothing must be suitable for all scheduled classroom activities, including physical education, science labs, wood shop, and other activities where unique hazards exist. G, specialized courses may require specialized attire, such as sports uniforms or safety gear. 2, the district dress code. Board policy 4.30.012 provides attire or grooming depicting or advocating violence, criminal activity, use of alcohol or drugs, pornography, or hate speech are prohibited. All PPS students are expected to comply with the requirements of this policy. Specifically, A, clothing may not depict, advertise, or advocate the use of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or other controlled substances. B, clothing may not depict pornography, nudity, or sexual acts. C, clothing may not use or depict hate speech targeting groups based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, or any other protected classification. D, clothing must not pose a threat to the health or safety of any other student or staff. E, enforcement must accommodate clothing worn by students as an expression of sincerely held religious beliefs, headscarves, for example, and worn by students with disabilities, protective helmets, for example. 3, parent responsibility. Board policy 4.30.012 provides the responsibility for the dress and grooming of a student rests primarily with the student and his or her parents or guardians. Parents or guardians are responsible for ensuring student compliance with the school dress code. 4, student responsibility. All students at all schools are responsible for complying with the district dress code during school hours and school activities. 5, staff responsibility. To equitably enforce the district dress code, teachers, administrators, and all school staff must be notified of the policy at the beginning of the school year with a refresher in March before spring break in regards to its purpose and spirit, and how to enforce it without shaming students or disproportionately impacting certain student groups. Staff should be guided by the dress code policy and follow the letter and spirit of the district dress code. 6, enforcement. When a teacher or school administrator discusses a dress or grooming violation with a student, it is recommended that another adult should be present and at least one of the 2 adults should be the same sex as the student. In no circumstances shall a student be spoken to about a dress code violation in front of other students. A, teachers or staff discussing a dress or grooming violation with a student should present options for obtaining appropriate clothing, e.g. school clothing closet. B, where possible, students should not be required to wear school-owned replacement garments and should never be required to wear specific garments as a disciplinary measure. C, discipline for dress or grooming violations should be consistent with the discipline policies for comparable violations. I'm going to stop there.
Hi, I'm Sophia Carlson, and I'll be starting 9th grade at Grant. And I would just like to say that this committee has worked very hard on coming up with a dress code that eliminates the problems that have accompanied current dress codes, such as body shaming, victim blaming, and lost educational time that disproportionately targets girls. The dress code we are proposing to you today has not only eliminated some of that specific language such as sexually suggestive or distracting, but also changes the mentality of girls being the problem for distracting boys, which may not have been the intention of current dress code, but it's following a wrongfully placed status quo. Schools are some of that first exposure to those ideas of victim blaming and objectification, which should not be part of the PPS system. With the new gender-neutral dress code, it's a perfect opportunity to educate students about why the dress code is being changed and how the new code and implementation plan will give students a voice in a societal shift we are striving for. Dress code enforcement is important, but it shouldn't be a disciplinary issue. We want it to support students instead of target and shame certain students. As I stated in my testimony from last year, our main goal is to make sure you are aware that we need to teach students healthy and respectful ways to treat each other. I feel that the dress code we have come up with is a great opportunity to take that step in the right direction, and hopefully future students won't face any discriminatory issues with dress code. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for all the time and support you have given to this issue, and it has been a great experience for me, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Board members, questions, comments?
I just want to commend the students who got this all started last year with, I don't remember if you were one of the young women who testified, but it was incredibly powerful testimony, and I'm so glad to be here today with these very reasonable reforms and recommendations. So, good job.
Can I just add something real quick onto that? I know that these are words on a piece of paper that comes from up top, and the biggest piece of it is actually the enforcement of it. So in the implementation plan, that's gonna be the most important thing. I mean, otherwise they just remain words on paper. At Irvington, the dress code was actually targeting girls, so it was sexist. At a place like Lane Middle School, it was not only sexist but also racist. So in addition to the gender neutral piece to it, we also want it to be anti-racist as well. And the work is just getting started. It's very easy to change words. It's much more difficult to put actually something in practice. And I think that's our biggest challenge right now, is actually put it into practice. And we're determined to do that, and we're gonna work hard. It's summertime, you know, it's like July, we have July, and so we have to get that done, and we make sure that we get that done and actually distribute it in the way it should be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job. I have one amendment to it. When should I do that amendment? Should I do it tonight or should I do it next week?
This is the first reading, so how would that work, Amanda?
So is it an amendment to the policy?
It's an amendment to it's a slight change in language.
To the policy or the administrative directive?
Yeah, it says administrative directive, but I'm not gonna see where it says policy.
The one pager that I read that
There's the policy.
precedes the
Doesn't say
AD.
policy on my thing. Okay, it's to the administrative directive.
So that is assigned by the superintendent, so that is something that can be amended, not going through the board policy process. So you could state it now as
And when we bring it back for the second reading, it could
Should
be
I
included.
just send
if
it,
there's-
should I just send an email to the superintendent then?
You can
On it, I
make
just.
it
But make your
Make it
point.
visible.
It has language in the enforcement that says, in no circumstances shall a student be spoken to about a dress code violation in front of other students. And I have a problem with that. I can think of many circumstances where you might have to do that, or it might be the correct thing to do that. And so I just would change the language to where reasonable, no student should be spoken to. Because if somebody walks into your class and they have on a hoodie and a mask, okay? Well, they're broken the dress code policy, right? Because they have on a mask. Can't see the face, can't see the ear, can't see, so they have a mask on. So you've got, according to this policy, and I try to make this stuff clearer according to this, I want to make it clear for teachers in this school and for students. So it would be, you could be written up as a teacher for saying to the kid, we want to start, John, please take off your mask so we can start. According to this administrative policy, that teacher can be written up. Absolutely. So the teacher's option is, one, leave the mask on, and that's not a very good option for your class, for our schools. And two, you could take the student outside in the hall and speak to them outside. Fine, sounds like a good option, but if there's other kids walking by, that option's not to you, you can't do that. So you now have to take the kid outside, leaving your whole class, where really it took just a little comment, why don't you take your mask off, John, and we'll start class. It's just in no circumstances, there's such absolute language, I just think it needs to be changed. But that's not, no, okay, so there you go, that's it. The other question that I have is more so, it's on the whole thing. Maybe, this doesn't have anything about gang attire in it. Is that in another policy, or are you eliminating that from the policy? Because I don't want people getting shot in our schools by allowing a lot of gang attire and gang stuff. So how do we come down, where does this come down? I'm confused on it, and I read through all the stuff, but I don't see it.
Well, and I'm sure you've done your homework too, and know that gang identifiers change, and so I think
I was the guy who called in 1986 to every public official in the city of Portland and said, gangs are coming into Portland, we have to do something about it. And every public official, except for one woman who was an assistant in the mayor's office, said, oh, that's baloney.
So
in
I think
87, we were the people in the school system helping to stop gang violence in our schools.
Sure. In response to the question, I think the piece where it's specifically referred to doesn't say gang attire, but it's a clothing must not pose a threat to the health or safety of any other student or staff. And I think that this is where you get into the trickiness of gang identification, which is ever shifting. So if we ban hats, they can wear something else. If you ban a certain kind of attire, they can shift that attire. And so the notion is that if the Youth Services Division is working with, our schools, the officers that are in our schools, and the gang enforcement team works with them, there should be a way that they could communicate some of those dangers in a way that would be more fluid and would also make more sense to the context. So hopefully that would be how it would be addressed.
Well, it doesn't say gang attire in this any place.
Nope.
And if I'm a principal out there in Hinterlands, and I'm looking at this, and it doesn't say gang attire, somebody says, well, you're gonna let gang attire? According to this policy, in a way, I would think you could come in with a red hat that said Bloods on it. And the guy down the hall comes in with a blue hat that says Crips on it. And really, is that a violence thing? No, not necessarily. Is it really a danger? Well, yeah, it's a danger, but are we seeing it as a danger? I just think it needs to be spelled out that we do not allow gang attire in our schools. And I know how that normally works is that, as I understand it, is that we get a briefing, our SROs and our security people get a briefing from the gang task force in Portland, in the city police, on a fairly regular basis, which updates us on the change of gang attire and allows us to deal with it in that way. I just think we need it in here.
Steve,
to
why
be
don't we
really clear.
have these guys respond, and then we can go forward.
I think there's a bigger issue of perceived gang attire. So once again, if someone walks in with a hat that says Crips or Bloods, you obviously know it's gang attire. But if someone's wearing a red bandana, but not necessarily connotating gang membership, but just as a fashion statement, and is perceived as being gang attire and told to take off and the whole 9 yards, that's where the conversations need to happen. That's where this piece of paper right here that we have in front of you is useless. This is knowing the kids, having a conversation with the kids, an honest one, in order to actually tease it out, to understand that, wait a minute, at the end of the day, this kid is not wearing something to actually be affiliated with a gang. They're just wearing it as a fashion statement. And if you get to the bottom of that, then once again, this board policy and administrative directive and all these little referrals and discipline issues disappear. But the thing is, it's been an issue for the past, at least for me, for about the last 9 years, right? In particular, Portland Public, last 5. So the issue is, in what way do we see our children, right? Our students, especially our children of color, once again, and in particular, the dress code, I think it even more affects at a school like Lane Middle School, our young women of color, in particular our black women of color, right? Young black women of color, because they're the ones getting targeted, and it's over not even gang affiliated things, but something like as simple as black yoga pants.
This particular policy works to stop that type of targeting. However, if you're wearing gang attire, that's clearly gang attire, in the school, then that needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're going to have people shot. And so it's not a matter of, it's not spelled out here. So the answer here is, in fact, just when you talked, you said, absolutely, that's not right. You don't want to gang. But in what you said was, I took it as saying that we don't want to deal with gang attire. So this doesn't spell it out. And this says the reverse.
I think Principal Kiefer read the part that addresses that you probably had the discussion specifically around how to look at clothing that either is or can be perceived as gang attire, and that language is broad enough to.
Right.
And is this something you might address in the implementation plan?
Yeah, I mean, the heart of this, and that's really been the conversation that Brian's trying to bring up around, like, one of the issues of past dress codes was schools would change or modify or adapt them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of subjectiveness to the dress codes. And you would get teachers who would get put in a really awkward position, because you would have a teacher who's well-meaning and trying to follow the rules, and they're calling kids on stuff, and then you have other people who don't feel comfortable, so they don't, not even that they don't want to, but they just don't feel comfortable. So it creates this inequitable thing that if anybody's ever worked with a teenager, or anybody has one, when you've been able to do something 6 times and the 7th person calls you on it, that's uncomfortable, because all of a sudden you're in a situation where you thought it was okay based on what people are saying is okay. So the whole notion of training is, what are we doing to prepare staff around what the dress code is? And part of that would be safety issues. So that's something that we're committing to in this piece, in the AD specifically, to do twice a year. To do at the beginning of the year, and then to do right around spring break when, clothing attire changes a little bit and people forget some of this stuff and it comes up again. So that's the notion. You present something that is one of the complicated issues among many, which is around how do you call that out? If it's shifting, right? Because you say gang attire today, once they get called out and they know it's gang attire, and people know it's gang attire, they shift. So it doesn't stay gang attire for all time. That's why if you look at their sheets, the hot sheets, they change. What they wear, their attire, those things, as they get called out on it, or they aren't able to, they don't wear it anymore.
And the job of our school principals is to stay up on that and take care of it. We had a gang shooting last night, more than one, handful of them. We don't need kids staking out halls in the school as the blood hall, or staking out halls in the school as this hall, because we're allowing them to wear gang attire, and they're then staking it all out. All that stuff is nice talk, and I spent 40 years, as you know, as a school teacher, and I've dealt with plenty of this stuff. I think, and like I said at the beginning, except for this one statement, the little bit, I'm totally in favor of it, but we need to be very specific that we will not be accepting gang attire in our schools, period. We can sugarcoat it every place that we want, but you'll quit sugarcoating it when somebody has a gun battle in the middle of one of our schools because somebody was in the wrong spot with the wrong clothes on and somebody's shooting somebody. And all of a sudden we'll decide, oh geez, it wasn't a really good idea to allow kids to fly their colors in our schools. We'll decide, oh, it wasn't a really good idea after all, when the kid's lying, and a kid and a few bystanders are lying on the ground shot from the gang. We had a gang shooting last night. We have schools in our school district that we have where gangs have claimed the playground for our schools. They've claimed the playground. This is a Bloods playground.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, but this is
No,
more
no, I know.
important. I'd like to have him respond to it.
Okay, but also Julie has a.
Fine, that's fine, but I would like to have him respond to
Well,
that.
it relates to this. It's just
Yeah.
in doing
Okay.
a search
We'll get to it.
about other policies, board policies related to dress codes. There are some nice examples that I found of gang-related apparel, and it has that language of what you're talking about, that because gang-related symbols are constantly changing, and then it gives some guidelines for how often the administration would review those and kind of give updates. So
Sure.
it just might be something to consider and look at some other examples, because it does address sort of that fluidity and the context for that, so that we're not misinterpreting the bandana, is from a fashion statement
Sure.
to it. So it just might be,
Okay.
I have
Do
some
you wanna
examples
say-
to look at.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond. As a teacher who's responsible for enforcing this kind of on the front lines, I think that the reason why that specific wording is not here is because it is so subject to interpretation, that each person comes into the world with their own ideas of what this means or what this indicates, and they make their own judgments, sometimes falsely, and I think that's where the implementation piece is so important because there's so much education that has to happen surrounding educating the staff in what those changing signs might be. So I think that the specific language of the policy is that the attire or grooming depicting or advocating violence, criminal activity right there are prohibited. That's the meat of that touches on that explicitly without it having the loaded language of suggesting or implanting in somebody's mind like, oh, I perceive this as gang attire, therefore I'm going to respond, I'm going to call this student out. So I think that there was absolutely not a dismissal of that, but very careful consideration of what that might be and how that might be interpreted. But I think it really is about the implementation and the education piece for enforcement.
All right, which you're going to bring a draft out on the 25th. All right, so.
Okay, well, I want to make the final statement then.
Final statement. This is the first reading. So.
Yeah, this needs to, we need to.
I'll show you
We
an
need
example.
And also too, at Lane Middle School, when Carl Logan was principal, before he became the senior director, he actually realized that at Lane Middle School there were no gangsters in school because he knows the students, he knows the neighborhood, and that's when he actually brought up a change. Like maybe we should relook at this policy because the thing is, we had this, there was policies against hats regarding like gang affiliation, but since there were no longer any more gangsters in the school, he was like, well, we need to revisit this policy, and that's when these conversations started coming up about, well, why do we have this policy? We're enforcing this thing that's arbitrary, right? So rather than having kids in the classroom, you're enforcing this rule and actually pulling the kids out of the classroom, the opposite of what the district's equity policy is. So I mean, that's really the thing, I think, is just knowing where you're teaching at, having good relations with your students, and understanding that when a kid is wearing a certain thing, if you know that kid, you know whether that kid is affiliated or not, right? And if they're dressing a certain way.
Yes and no.
Right.
Yes and no. A lot of
yes and no.
teachers don't know. A lot of principals may.
But I'm going to bet that, like, all the kids
they
that I
don't know.
teach, I will know. I will
You
know.
would know,
Like,
but not. But there's 3,400 teachers in this school system.
Right, that's probably
I would guess, yeah.
More policy in the classroom.
And you're not going to train all the teachers to deal with gang attire because it changes fairly regularly. But you can teach. You can train all your SROs. You can train your security people, and you can regularly train them to help keep gang attire and gang-affiliated flying of colors and so forth out of your school. You can train people to do that, but in order to do that, you have to say, we're not going to have gang attire in our school, and this doesn't say that. It's not illegal to be in a gang in the state of Oregon. Gangs themselves are not illegal. They're only illegal when they start breaking the law.
Okay.
I would assume.
Steve,
So, you know.
let's wrap it up, and then what I would
Next time,
suggest.
we'll do it again.
Okay.
Next time.
Second time,
When it
and
comes
you
back.
can. If
Do it again, we'll take a look,
And
see if
in
we
the
make
meantime,
changes.
maybe have some
Right.
discussions.
Yeah, we'll talk, Steve.
And we'll see what the implementation plan is, and if there's the will of the board to support an amendment, we'll do it. Go ahead.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
We're still doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of you who worked so hard on this. I think we all know dress codes, what a gnarly topic, right? Really, really hard. And I have to say, I remember really well because back in 1968, when I was a middle schooler, I led the protest because girls weren't allowed to wear pants. You could only wear dresses to school. So there you go. So I understand that it's a gnarly issue, and I will say that we won that fight, as you all know now, because you're all wearing pants, but back then, no, you couldn't. So, and even then, you had to wear nice pants, no jeans, just nice pants. So, so fast forward to today, and I just finished in a position where for the last 5 years, I advised young people who are looking for jobs about proper attire for going to look for a job. And I was always surprised at how difficult it was for young people to understand that you don't go look for a job in your Saturday night date outfit, boys or girls. So I think that we need to be aware of messages that we're sending to kids as well about what is proper attire. And I think that this particular policy is just missing a couple of things that I'd like to suggest to you. One of them is that it doesn't focus on why you're in school. I mean, you're in school because it's a learning environment. And I think that it has to acknowledge that someplace in this, that's why you're here to learn, and it's a learning environment. And the other part that I would add is it seems like it's got a lot of negativity to it. You're not going to do this, you can't do that, but I think one of the things that is important and places the burden where it should be, to me, kind of does it in the first sentence, but doesn't go far enough for me. I would put something, and this is just something I wrote up here, so flexibility, that the students and parents show respect for themselves, their peers, teachers, and the community, and concern for maintaining a quality learning environment in the schools when they're considering their dress. I'd like to have something like that within the policy that really kind of talks a little bit about why we're here and places the burden on the people that it should be on, which is the students, as they're trying to decide what to wear to school that day, to make sure that they're thinking about where I'm going and what the purpose is. So I'd like to suggest some changes like that.
All right. Thank you, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
I
comments?
just have appreciation. This was a really hard-working work group with, as Pam said, a gnarly topic, and you guys did a great job putting something together that I'm impressed to see here in front of us tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then just to be clear, if there are changes that the board would like to make or that you guys want to suggest after hearing this, then that would start another process of hearing. So it would add it to another board meeting, which is not the end of the world. So thank you very much.
You're getting started early.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again, you guys.
Okay, Superintendent Smith, do you want to provide us with an update on the water and air quality
I do, and we
environmental
have
actions?
Yusuf Awad, who is our Chief Financial Officer and also currently acting Chief Operating Officer, and David Hobbs will provide an update on all of our health and safety issues.
Superintendent Smith, Board Directors, we started, the testing of the water is underway. We're scheduled to complete the testing this weekend. The results are coming, and as we get them, we're posting them. That's about the water. As far as the blood testing, we have signed a contract that we brought to the board last board meeting. That's for on-site testing. We have another contract that's in the agenda today, up to $1 million for mail-in packets. Excuse me. It will cover a significant number of people. We're anticipating about 280,000 roughly to be used for the employees. The remaining is backup plan, potentially if we need it, to use it for students. In addition to that, you'll have in the agenda today a resolution to use up to $5 million in reimbursement if the bond passes, that we can reimburse the general fund for any capital improvements that we will spend on health and safety issues. The last item I have on the update is CH2M. We have kicked off the meeting today. They'll be on our facility starting July 1st, this Friday. And hopefully they're scheduled to complete the work in about 4 months. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Board members, questions? Thank you, Yusuf. Paul?
Yusuf, thank you very much. I'm a little confused by the ZRT Labs contract here. These up to 10,000 test kits, they're $100 a piece?
It's about $60 a piece. It should be, I don't know why it says 10,000. I'll have to review that. Initially, we had a number that we negotiated. We negotiated the price down. It should come up to about 14,285 tests based on the price that we have.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else over here? Steve?
last week I voted against the budget because we didn't have, and one of the reasons was because we didn't have any money in that budget to deal with the lead paint. And you had said 20 schools we had prioritized 20 schools, correct, Mr. Hoff? That's what you said last week.
So let me clarify that again. David Hobbs, Senior Director for Facility Asset Management. What I said about the 20 schools is we had 20 schools that were included in that list that I presented at the bond committee that were pulled forward and representative of classes of lead paint condition from 1 through 4, which is from our worst case to some of our better condition paint, and that those were representative of projects that could be done with the money. And in those particular projects that we identified totaled the $870,000.
Those are representative? You said representative, so that's 20 out of 80? We have lead paint in 80 and the 20 are representative? Is that what you're saying?
As I suggested,
I
I
thought
think-
you said there were there were 20 top priority ones. That's what
No, I
understood.
did not
You didn't
indicate they
say
were the
that?
top priority,
So these
no.
are not, so they're not, we have.
Several of those
prioritized?
on that list are priorities, and our highest priority needs that are on there. Others were not.
Do we have a priority list?
We are working through that process now to identify additional projects that we might be able to go after for remediation, encapsulation of the lead paint at more schools. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, in this coming fiscal cycle, we have $125,000 that we've carved out for lead paint encapsulation, plus another $50,000 from the Water Bureau grant.
But I want to be clear on this. The $5 million that we're looking at tonight in terms of the reimbursement, these projects would qualify for that. Is that correct?
So it had to be capital improvement projects, and if extend the life of the asset for at least 1 year, that's considered a capital project. So the assessment may not be, but the actual work.
The fixing of the.
The
okay.
fixes, yeah, correct.
So did you get that?
No.
Okay.
The $5 million is to be spent where if we do that?
It can be spent on this very exact thing that you've been talking about, and get reimbursed for by the future bond proceeds.
And are we planning to do that?
So we
First,
are.
we need to pass our bond.
Well, but also, but we need to prioritize.
To reimburse it.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
We're
There's a very
working-
good chance we won't even be putting a bond out. What if we don't put a bond out? What happens to that $5 million?
Then
We are working on a plan to prioritize the schools. We're engaging our representative from the unions and the custodians and the painters and our folks to make sure that we address the schools that are at the most need during the summer, and that's our plan. So there's a lot of work that's gonna be done in between to get to that point. But our plan is to address those schools as soon as we can. I don't know if it's gonna be 5 million. I don't know the dollar amount because we don't have that numbers yet. But this is just kinda to hedge our plans and kinda plan ahead. I mean, that's really what the 5 million is for.
and you'll come back to the board with a plan.
Definitely.
By when?
We've got a couple of meetings scheduled in the next 10 days, maybe in a couple of weeks.
This is a plan to do work this summer?
That's our goal. I don't know if we will or
On
not.
blood,
We will be in a better position to tell you
Paint
that.
testing, so where basically it's still all floating around in the air someplace.
We're working on a plan for you, so we'll
Okay,
bring
but it's-
we'll bring
yeah,
the
it's
board the
not-
plan
it's
when we
not
have
that-
it.
okay,
I don't
let
wanna
me-
promise you something that I can't deliver, so I wanna make sure I can
Okay, there you go.
deliver.
We can grab it out of there when it comes by, and we'll come up with something good. I want to ask a couple other questions, maybe somebody else wants to, I get a couple more.
No, go for it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back and talk about the lead the lead paint, the lead in the water. I got an email today that said we're going to do one a day.
What a day.
One school a day. basically that that's what it looks like. Was that an accurate email?
I'm not aware of any email.
We're almost done testing. We should be done by this weekend doing the testing.
Oh,
Let
I
me
mean,
just-
and back.
Sorry, Steve, are you talking about the email that I
Yeah.
sent? So what I said is that we're expecting at least one school a day of results starting like now.
Yeah,
And so
that's what I thought.
Right. So
That's what I
so
thought you
it's-
said.
So it's not one a day, it's at least one, like, so what I was letting you know is that we're expecting results almost every day now for at least one school, probably more. So that we are now sending out those notices directly to schools and their school communities. And then we're also gonna be providing the aggregate results to the entire district, all PPS, to the families and to the staff, as part of our weekly updates that we're sending out. Okay?
Great, thank you. That
Yeah.
clarifies, I really appreciate that, Amanda. So, are we going to be done by July 8th, which is basically what I was promised? And I threw in a couple extra days for you to give you a little word, a little extra. Are we going to be done testing the water in all our schools and have the results all out by July 8th, which was, I mean, but that was what I was promised by people. So the answer, I'd like to know, because if it's not, then I think maybe you need to shift focus on the plan that I had put forth, which allowed us to get through the main testing for each school by July 8th, so that the children in our school system still had time to get their blood tested when it made sense, because after you get a couple, 3 or so weeks past that, you're pushing on the edge of when it makes sense. Now, I was told July 8th, everything done. Working 24 hours a day, evidently. We gonna make it?
That's correct. So just to make sure we're on the same page, so as Yusuf indicated, we're wrapping up our sampling this weekend, including this building that's at the end of the week. This is almost the last building we're doing. We're
So
down
we've
to our
actually
last
got all the
few
water
schools.
collected in all our buildings.
That's correct.
And
We
so
are-
all we're waiting on now is for the lab to do the water testing.
That's correct, and I
And
believe.
the labs are getting overloaded and so forth, which is a problem, and that's different than when we talked about it at the beginning. But at the same time, we do need to get done in time for our
Correct.
children to get their
We're
blood
still
tested.
pushing very hard
Which is gonna be my next
to
question.
have those results back as quickly as we can. We've continued to add additional lab capacity, labs under contract to help us with the testing of the A samples, which is the first draw. And again, I'm hopeful that we will be there. We'll have a better handle on that in the next couple of days as those results, as the samples get sent back to the labs and the labs are able to give us more accurate information on when it's coming back.
Okay, July 8th, I'm looking for it. Let's talk about the blood testing of the children. Last week I asked about that and was told that the county was right on that. So when I called the county the next morning, the county wasn't on it at all. The county was lost, running around with their head cut off. They hadn't done anything, basically, to think in terms of the number of children that we had coming. And in fact, the county said, no, we ain't gonna get that many children tested. 8,000 to 10,000 children, if that's what it looks like about what it's gonna come down. The county said, no. And I talked to the woman who was the head of the program that did that stuff. They said they didn't have any plans to put on any extra work necessarily, except they did say, we're going to prioritize to some degree based on the type of school that it was. They did say that, but my sense of when we were done is they might get lucky if they get to close to 1,000, and we're talking 8,000 to 10,000 children. So the county didn't have their act together, or even close to their act together. They weren't even in the same ballgame, as nice as people as they are. They hadn't done what we said, so put me back a week for checking on them. Well, I checked on them the next morning, but it took a week to get back here to say, hey, the county doesn't have their act together. So are we going to test those children since the county does not appear to do that? Now, we talked about that, and so I'll give you a chance to answer that.
So we have talked to the county. The county they have issued update on how they're gonna monitor the situation, and it's in the document I just passed. And that's the message that we have gotten from the county. They are ready to help as needed. They have 10 sessions scheduled in the next 2 months, 5 in July and 5 in August, that we will provide to the parents of our kids. In addition
It's
to that.
about 2,000 kids.
In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a contract that it's on the business agenda that allow us to test close to 14,000 people.
13,000 children or 13,000?
14,000 people, so it could be kids, could be employees. So these are the plans we have. I mean, the county is still ready to help and assist as needed, but we also have that contract in case in terms of capacity, because they should probably become a capacity. How many kids can you test in a one
So if
day?
we test 10,000 children and 3,000 teachers, say, we have a contract that's going to do that?
We currently have capacity to test about 16, close to 16,000
And
people.
we're gonna have that done by the, July have 30 or 31 days?
The on-site test that we already scheduled, and there will be a letter going to the employees in their paycheck this weekend. And we'll be sending other communication through PPS, and we'll send a second letter about the mail-in to the employees as well. All of that is being communicated, so we will have capacity for about 16,000. The mail-in, it's up to the parents to order the kit, and it's really their timeline. It's not my timeline necessarily.
And then
As
there-
far as the on-site testing, we have that scheduled throughout the month of July.
Do we have on-site testing then for 10,000 kids, if nobody mailed in?
We don't have 10,000. We have close to 3,300. The contract's about 3,300 roughly, and we have the county 10 sessions in addition to that.
I thought you said 16,000.
Total. That's including the mail-in packets.
So the mail-in's not gonna be very, I mean, it's very likely to not be very high. Mail-in is a penny, take a kid down and take them home. That's kinda gonna be my guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my guess that that's where we're going the most. So are we gonna be able to test all the children in that if nobody let's say nobody mailed in, can we still test all the children?
If you're talking about on-site testing,
Yep.
That will depend as we get info from these.
See how much it is, how many kids and stuff.
Correct, and then we'll be working with the county on that.
And that on-site testing will be in one of our schools in a certain place, in different parts of the community? What's the
So
on-site testing gonna be?
The one we're contracting for, the auto and our facilities,
Okay.
the county already have scheduled testing through the month of July and August, and if we need more, then that's a conversation we'll have with the county at that time.
Okay, well, I'm confused about that, because the county's only gonna test a certain number. And then we've got other on-site testing that we're going to do for thousands of children that we're going to do and pay for.
We have not scheduled on-site testing on our facility for the students yet, because we don't know what that's gonna look like. Till we figure that out, till we find the results of the water and we know what the county is gonna do, then we can react
So
accordingly.
are we planning to do we have a plan in our head, so to speak, for testing 8,000 children or 10,000 children on-site?
So, Steve, we have 2 contracts. One of them for on-site testing that we can expand on to include students if needed.
Up to how much?
We will have to work with the company to see what's their capacity.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, that bothers me and makes me worry about it, because if their capacity is 850 kids and we need to test 10,000, we're already behind. We gotta find out that capacity and make sure they can do what we wanna do, or otherwise we have to get other people online, don't we?
So Steve, also the thing we just gave you is what they've got posted on their website that I'm gonna read out loud to you, just because.
You mean the county?
The county.
Yeah, but it's not the question, Carol. It's nice, but I mean, the county's gonna do their thing. I already talked in depth to the county people. If they get to 1,000, I'll be surprised, but they might. But by July, the end of July. But the question is, if they're not gonna get to it, are we set up to get to it or not? It's either yes, kinda in a way. If we have a contract for 10,000 kids, and they can go up to 10,000 kids, then we're set up to deal with the numbers of children that we have. If our contract goes up to 3,300 and the county does 1,000 and we have 10,000 kids who want tested, we're 5,000 kids short. Which I don't
Okay.
want to get into that, and we don't know that until we get into July, and so it's very difficult for us to hurry around to get it. We need to have that in our head, and we need to have the plan set out, in my opinion. So the question, I guess, is, do we have that plan set out or not, I guess?
Steve, as I said, we have capacity for on-site testing close to 3,300. We have the county that is, as
About
Carol
1,000.
mentioned, they're ready to respond depending on the severity of the lead.
Okay,
And we have-
so we're.
Then we have the mail-in packets, which give us another
So
14,000
we're about
capacity.
5,000 kids short, possibly.
Well, that's not true,
Why
because
don't,
we don't know
what
the
I
answer to
suggest
that.
you to is sending a memo on
Yeah, but
this
I want to
issue.
settle it here in the public,
Well-
because the public has the right to hear this, and the people have the right to report it.
Yeah,
Whether
go-
we're ready or not, that's a
Go
public
ahead.
matter. It's not just me. It's not me asking this. It's everybody who voted for me, 47,000 people, asking these questions, and we should have
47,000
answers
people?
to them. And I'm sorry if it takes a little bit of your time, you guys' time, but it's really too bad
Well, I think-
that it does. So all I'm saying is
You're
we have
monopolizing, Steve.
43, we have capacity without sending the stuff in for 4,300 kids.
I don't know what the county capacity exactly
Counselor,
for those 10.
If they get to 1,000, we'll be very surprised.
Okay, Pam.
Great. So I'll go ahead and read what the county says. It says, "The health department is independently analyzing PPS building maintenance records to prioritize lead screening resources so Multnomah County can provide school-specific services in the coming days. Health department staff will be scheduling free lead screening clinics in response based to the severity of the lead levels and student demographics." So to me, that sounds like the county is ready to step up and help.
750 kids.
You don't know how many, Steve. You're
I-
making a wild guess.
No, I'm not making a wild guess. I spent a long time.
You have no idea.
I spent a long
No
time.
idea.
I spent a long time talking
With the
to-
person who didn't even know what
I
was on their
spent a
website.
long time talking to the person who's head of this entire program at the county.
Well, then they should have known what was on their website.
But their
while they were
website,
offering to
this
do
says
this.
it's under 1,000. This says set up three things, and she
It
talked
says
about.
they'll go to schools
and
wherever
she
we
talked-
ask. Just like
and-
they said when we had our public meetings, Steve.
And she talked about prioritizing and how they did that and how they went about the prioritizing. And when I asked about the capacity of the county, they did not have a capacity that's anywhere near what these people are talking about.
We
It's
also
not.
have no
It's not
idea-
even close.
We also have no idea how many people will seek to be tested.
Well, we have a pretty good idea because we ran every one of our schools that we put in, that we tested lead on, was about, what do we have, 570 for two schools?
519,
How much?
519.
Okay, so it's about 250 per school. And our lead testing ourselves in the past has found between 40 to 50 schools. So if you take 40 and you multiply it by 200, that comes to 8,000 children. And if you take if you take 50 and you multiply it by 200, that comes to 10,000 children. And that's a pretty good idea of the outside edge of where we're going to be.
So that'll
if we
take
get
12
to that
days.
edge. Please,
12 days,
Pam, boy,
right?
please.
I had the
can we-
floor, Steve, and you interrupted me.
Okay.
Please stop. I'm not done. You go ahead if you want, and I'll wait for you to finish.
Well, that comes to 12,000 students? What is that?
10,000, 8 to
10
10,000.
8 to 10, so 12 days with the county.
The county's not going to do that. They already said they're not to me.
Well,
I talked to the head of the program, and the county said they're not going to do it.
They say to the public that they are going to.
No,
do
they don't. If you read
It's
this
right here.
carefully, it doesn't say that.
it. Yes, they do.
Read where it says
Steve,
they're going
we're-
to take care of all the kids.
It says right here.
Read it, please, if you would you mind?
Health
Pam?
Department will be scheduling free lead screening clinics in response based to the severity of the lead levels and student demographics.
And what that says is this, and this is what the head of the county program told me. What that means is they are going to prioritize according to the type of school that it is, and they have nowhere near the capacity to do 8 to 10,000 children. That's what they said, and they do approximately 1,000 kids a year. And they are not going to, if they get over 1,000, I'd be very, very, very surprised after the conversation I had with the head of the county. Call her up and ask her who's running that program and see what she says. The answer is, if they get to 1,000, very, very surprising. That they just say they're going to prioritize. So they're going to take the poorer schools in this city, and they're going to prioritize those schools for the county to test, because the children in those schools, they believe, have a worse diet. And if you have a worse diet, then you end up putting more lead into your system because you're short of minerals. And that's what the county said, and they're going to prioritize in that way. But I asked her dead out. I said, "You going to do 8,000 to 10,000 kids?" She just, the first guy asked that, he just laughed. She said, "No, we have nowhere near the capacity to do that." That's what the county says. That's how the county is doing it. So the question, if we're at 3,300 and the county's at 1,000, we're at 4,300, and if we're looking 8,000 to 10,000 and we're doing it by the end of July, we need a plan that expands that.
Well, I think the test kits are part of that plan.
Well, you're
And
going to have, but you
so
would
that's
have to have
16 those are
6,000 kids, 6,000 people send in test kits, and they're going to take 6,000 test kits in one, basically coming in all at once. You think 6,000 out of those 10,000 are going to go on test kits instead of taking their kid to a deal and having it and then getting the result right there? And they don't have to they don't have to pay anything to get it, where you send in the test kit, you gotta pay, you gotta do all the stuff, you gotta test yourself. Of course they're not gonna do.
They don't have to pay anything.
Well,
There is no
you can
cost.
just dump it in the mailbox and off you go.
It's gonna be pre-posted,
So you think 6,000 people are gonna do test kits instead of taking their kids to the thing, and we're gonna do all those test kits within a 3-week period? Is that what people are telling me? And how much money will people give me to let me go out to dinner and celebrate that I was right here if it comes about? No, it might not come about, but we need to have a plan in case it does come about, and the county doesn't have it. And no offense, and we do have a plan sending the test kits, but if those test kits, if let's say if we do test 3,300 people, how many of those are, well, wait, how many, that's not counting teachers, right? We have 3,300 kids, or is that counting teachers?
Steve, we're not going to come up.
That's
What I wanted to, what I suggest is.
That's nice, but I'm not doing it that way, Tom. You can gavel me down if you want, but I ain't gonna be one happy camper of it. I wanna get this finished so the public understands exactly what we're doing.
And what I'm suggesting is that we do not have an exact plan tonight to do that.
That's what I'm
The intent of
asking.
the board is very clear. We're working with partners. We're putting resources into it. It sounds to me like there is the aspects of the plan are there. What I'd like to have Yusuf do is put together a plan, send it to the board, work with Steve over the next few days, and we can make it public.
33, let me ask the last question.
Okay, and then we'll move on.
3,300, that doesn't include adults? The 3,300 plan doesn't include adults? It
That
does include
includes, that's total.
That includes adults?
Yes.
And so if we got 3,400 teachers, and we have over 50% come on in, 1,500, that only leaves 1,800 for children out of the, and if the county does 1,000, and so that's 2,800, and 2,800 from 10,000, if it happened to turn out to be 10,000, 2,800 from 10,000 leaves us 7,200 test kits sent in within a 3-week period, and somebody's gonna get that and get back to the people within,
Okay.
So Steve, this is what I got to say. We have a contract for on-site. We are approaching others and the company to see if we can get more capacity. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. For more on-site testing, we have not completed that discussion yet, so I can't give you the info on that one.
Okay.
And
In
we are
addition to
looking to
that,
get
we have
more
the mail-in
capacity.
packet and we have the county. So
working to
these,
get more capacity,
that's what we're working on.
and we're having trouble doing that?
Well, we haven't concluded that discussion, so I can't share with you what I have handy yet.
But as soon as you do, you will.
Definitely.
So the answer to the public is, we don't really know if
No,
we're
the
going to
answer
be
to
able
the
to
public
test
is
all
we're
the
working
answers.
on a
We
plan.
have
We're making a
started the
significant
process.
investment tonight to have capacity available in 3 different ways, including directly from the county.
Maybe Amy, you could We could use you as the new PR person. That was quite good.
Just trying to
Yeah,
summarize.
so
Yeah.
It was a pretty
Okay.
good spin on it. All right.
Okay.
Just an accurate
Thank you,
representation.
Yusuf and David. Carol, do you have any wrap up to any of that discussion?
Can you summarize,
Can I
please?
No,
summarize
not
that?
just
Not to
that, but the
Just
whole,
that
the whole effort on the
I just feel
environmental.
like people are really working hard to try and have forward motion, and
Yeah.
you can feel the forward motion that's happening, so.
Okay, good. And these points you're raising are good. Yeah, yeah. All right. So the next on the agenda is resolution about the superintendent search. Now that Carol has announced her retirement, it's the intent of the board to start a search immediately and to do it in a professional manner, both the search and the transition. And so this resolution simply codifies that. It should be in people's packets. And essentially, the first thing that the board will do is solicit input for search firms. And the chair will appoint an ad hoc committee of 3 board members to help get those solicitations, RFPs to the board, and then the board will make the approval and selection of a firm.
So moved.
So, second. So resolution 5302, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution 5302 is passed by a vote of 6-0 with Student Representative
Aye.
Davidson voting aye. Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, so now we, make sure we don't miss anything here, are going to the business agenda. Are there items that folks would like to get pulled out of the business agenda?
Tom, I'd like to pull the contracts for Self-Enhancement, Inc., the Latino Network, and NIA, please. I have a couple of questions.
Okay. NIA Self-Enhancement was the other one?
Latino Network.
Latino Network, okay. Anybody else? I see two ones for the NIA.
Same with SEI.
Yeah, there are 2
Same.
for
Yeah,
each.
What was the
okay.
other one?
Same with Latino Network.
Okay, so all of them.
So
on
all of
both-
them.
On front, okay.
Tom, I'd like to talk about all of them on here in a way. Mount Scott Park Center, also Open School Incorporated also.
Okay.
But Portland Youth Builders, Southeast
So you-
Works, Portland Community College, Youth Progress Association, and
Okay, so we don't have a business agenda that we're going to pass without question,
Oakland
so
School.
let's,
and Resolutions Northwest. Yeah, there's a couple on here.
okay. So,
New governmental agreements.
then let's, I think I'd like to get this whole thing on the table. So, in order to talk about these, we need to get them on the table. So is there a motion to move in second, Resolution 5297?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion, Pam?
So I am always supportive of our alternative opportunities for our students, and we had some wonderful testimony here tonight from people who have graduated from those programs and gone on to lead very successful, wonderful lives, as well as their parents. I felt for that mother whose son just graduated from U of O. That was wonderful. However, this morning I realized in my packet I didn't have the information I needed in order to complete looking at these. Particularly, I'm interested in the metrics around success rate and that kind of thing. So my suggestion would be that, and I should say that when I arrived tonight, there was a packet of material at my seat here, but obviously I'm paying attention to the meeting, so there really isn't any opportunity for me to go through all that at this time. And I'd like to propose that we move these to the next board meeting.
Table?
Tom, if I could, Director, I would like to support Director Knoll's suggestion. Director Esparza-Brown and I have been feverishly going through some of this material, and we have some questions, or at least I do. I think you do also. But I do want to point out we aren't going to have a meeting for a month. Is that going to cause an issue? Oh.
Thank you, that's what my question would be.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone will have the answer to the questions tonight.
We might.
Because just looking through the document, I didn't see the questions answered that I was asking earlier. And unless you know the graduation rates and other specific information of each of these programs in comparison to prior years. We have in the summertime done just a business agenda meeting where we could meet for 15 minutes to just do the business agenda. Maybe we could do that.
I'm open to that. Would it be good to get some questions out now tonight?
Absolutely. I think that'll help
I just
Karina
have a
figure
question
out what
for
we
Tom.
all want to know.
Well, one thing is, I don't have the data for all of the contracts that are, that we're looking at here, so I would like complete data, and I would be really open to having a meeting soon.
Well, I would hope it
Yeah.
is in the next couple of days. A number of those contracts, July 1, will interrupt services that staff
Okay.
are providing for families and kids.
Right.
And if
Well,
such in data,
You need the material, Lorenzo. You
So-
need the information to make a decision.
So, I just would like to make a comment about the process here. I think each of us have made efforts this week to learn more about some of these specific contracts, and we have made progress in the last 6 months generally around attaching accountability metrics and a deeper level of information with particularly our directly negotiated contracts. So I want to thank Youssef and his team particularly Emily for making progress on that. However, we are still not at a place where, as a board, we are receiving just basic information behind each one of these. Typically, they're contract renewals. Sometimes they're new contracts. Basic information that also includes just basic accountability metrics. And this information that Karina provided tonight includes most of the data that I would need. So we need that as a matter of course. And I asked 10 days ago or so to have it be, this item be included on the Business and Operations Committee agenda so that we could finally get this work done of attaching accountability metrics to our contracts. It was not put on the agenda, so further delay in just getting systems in place that will give us the information that we need to make informed decisions and to for the public to see what these contracts are all about, whether or not they're a good investment, what type of data these organizations have when they're renewals. Because just from digging myself, I know that, at least on this agenda tonight, most of these organizations do have good data. They do have metrics. They have more information about their effectiveness than we ask for even as the contractee of our contractees. But we just need to get that template, that structure in place. And I think through the Business and Operations Committee is the way to do that.
So Tom.
Yes.
So my concern is, well, again, I would like a complete set of material. So not every contract that's listed on here I could find data for in what you provided. But what can we do here? Can we problem solve this? Because I really don't want to see services interrupted. These are critical services. So what can we agree to somehow be able to provide so that the services continue as we're working through solving the problem ultimately in terms of what we would be asking for consistently as metrics across every contract?
Carol.
I was just going to say, in this particular moment with the alternatives there, this was a response to a request for proposals, correct?
Correct. And
Correct. Because you did get some of that information, and I'm thinking even a brief presentation about what you have here in the packet, because this is a moment that's, people have come forward and presented their data and applied again for the dollars, and so it's been a formal, we're at the end of a formal process here. That just hearing a little bit about that may let you feel comfortable moving.
Is that the data that's included in here? Well, I looked.
So
This looks like it's old data to me. It's 2014, 15?
So that's the most, so I'd love to tell you what's in the packet, and maybe that would be a starting place. But thank you, Superintendent Smith. Carol's absolutely right. We finished an RFP process every 5 years. We are required to go out to RFP. We did that process this year. We went through our purchasing and accounting process with our formal RFP process, had requests for proposals, reviewed the proposals, worked through our contract negotiations phase, and brought 10 of the 11 proposers who were approved forward for contract. What I will share with you is, and I am happy to do whatever people would like and be helpful in any way however people would like information, I would gladly provide it to you in that form or format. Given that this was on the business agenda and not a board item, part of what I did was try to capture what I perceived to be the questions that would be coming. So what we have, which I think is really important, is we have and some of this, for those of you that have been on the board in previous years, is I've included the segmentation analysis, which we did, which really looks at our system, which we are, by the way, just looking at and currently in their second segmentation analysis currently. So we will have an updated segmentation analysis, kind of 2.0 in the future, which I'm very excited about. In addition, we looked at our alternative accountability framework. And so one of the things that we have is we have, in answer to a really legitimate wonder around how do we measure alternative schools in a way that makes sense for the student population, we have developed alternative accountability framework. So what happens is there's often misinformation or misunderstanding around students in alternative schools, and I cannot be more grateful to the students and the families that spoke tonight and the program leaders that spoke tonight, because every single student is a story, as you well know, and so part of what we do is we have qualitative data, we have with site visits and interviews, we have quantitative data with alternative accountability framework, and then we have contract compliance. And those are really the three legs of our stool with which we proceed with and evaluate our contracts, all of our providers. So with regard to our metrics, what happened is, and I know Carla Gay is here too, who was instrumental in leading this work, was we had an alternative accountability framework task force, and we looked nationally to say, how do people measure alternative schools? What happened is we looked at our national partners in Chicago, in Boston, in New York, in Denver, in Los Angeles, in Seattle, in a variety of cities, and we modeled largely, again, I want to credit Carla Gay with her leadership, largely after Chicago Public Schools. What we have done is create an alternative accountability framework, which looks at and this is the metrics in this, and for folks in the audience, it has a yellow sheet. So we looked at how do we start to measure apples to apples as far as skill growth. So, and that's a process that we are in, is we looked at what are the growth scores for MAP or the growth scores for CASAS with regard to reading and with regard to math. We looked at what is credit attainment, what is the process for credit attainment for our students, and these are the measures that are on the alternative accountability framework, both per school and for us as a system, PPS alternative system. Part of what we have is we have success and completion criteria. So part of what is not accurate to say, when people say, oh, they have a lousy 4-year graduation rate, when students in alternative education enter alternative education at an average age of 17 and a half and more than 6 credits behind, that's really not the most relevant metric for us to use. What's the most relevant metric, for, even though you heard young people tonight say they really worked hard and some of them did graduate in 4 years, which is fantastic. What the most relevant metric to use is for schools, and this is what we're finding nationally, is for students who are within 6 credits, for students who, in the first year we did within 8 credits, for true seniors, you can be in school 5 years and have 11 credits and still have 13 to go. For true seniors, how are our community-based alternative programs doing with true seniors? So we looked at, that's really when we look at graduation rate. Then the second part is credit attainment. Then lastly, we looked at attendance and school climate. And school climate we're still working on, but we're looking at retention in programs. One of the reasons that the segmentation analysis is so important to us as a district is that the segmentation analysis talked about how many schools our students had been in prior to their CBO. The average, as you see on the front of this page that says PPS Alternative High Schools, the average number of schools prior to entering their current contracted community-based alternative school is 4 other high schools. The average number of weeks out of school, unenrolled from school, is 11. So we are both a prevention from dropout, an intervention for kids that are struggling, and a recovery, a re-engagement. It's the continuum of prevention, intervention, and re-engagement. And that's really what one of the things that we task our community-based alternative schools to do. Part of what we wonder, and part of what I started to say, was one of the real gems of the segmentation analysis was it identified that 91% of the students who had dropped out the previous year had come back and maintained in community-based alternative schools. And so part of what we had, and you heard some of the stories tonight, is we have a number of students who struggle with social anxiety, or we have a number of students who feel like because of their home situation or other barriers in their lives or their learning style, it wasn't necessarily a right fit in their first high school that they went to. Part of what we realize is we have to have a continuum of learning environments to meet the various student needs that we have. So part of what we looked at is how do we measure all of these things in a way that's relevant, that gives real data, so we can measure schools against one another, so we can measure schools as a system, so we can say, it's fine that I'm bringing a child into this school who's a sophomore per se, but is his or her skill growth happening? It's not that just that we want everyone to graduate unless they are ready for post-secondary. And I'll just say one more thing before I stop for a second, is you will notice that we have GED on there. Mm-hmm. And part of what we have GED is we have the measure, the national measure of the new GED at 145. 145 has been identified by the College Board as being college ready. So if somebody passes the GED but they pass at a lower rate, we don't count them in our metrics because what we want for our students is to be post-secondary ready. So that was a lot, and there's more, but
John, can I comment?
Sure.
Thank you. That was a really helpful explanation. So given that framework for the data that is available, and again, it's not complete for everything on our list tonight, the data looks really very good in terms of the progress. It's helpful the way that you've the color-coded growth measures.
Thank you.
So as looking through all of the alternative schools, it looks really as a whole that they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, there are some places of growth needed, of course.
Absolutely.
But really in general, as I did spend some time going through every one of these. So that's just my general reflection at this point.
Thank you.
And could I just make a procedural point? Because I think there are sort of two different buckets of contracts that have the same organizations, and I just want to make sure that we're looking at those separately. So there is both the alternative education contracts, which are the pieces that Karina's speaking to, and then there are a number of other contracts using in many cases, the same organization. So NEA, Latino Network, and Open School all have other contracts that are not part of that program, but have different ones here, family engagement and supports for students, okay?
And is the distinction you're making, the first bucket was part of the RFP for which
Exactly.
they were qualified, considered qualified, and the second one are just directly negotiated?
Yes, although there was an RFP done at an earlier moment for those, and a bunch of that information on those family engagement contracts. And Dunya and Lorenzo are here, could speak to those, so I would want them to be the ones to do so. But we have also provided a number of pieces of information and metrics on those contracts to the board at different points throughout this year at the request of Director Rosa normally. But those have been contracts that we've been looking at a number of times.
So then
Yeah.
that's why the information was not here. So as I look at
Correct.
these,
Yeah.
the two for Latino Network are not alternative schools.
Right, exactly. So that's
one
just-
NEA and the two SEI.
Exactly, that's the distinction I just wanted to make sure you all had.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's helpful too.
Good.
Thank you, yes, I do. Ms. Wolf, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Very uncomfortable with what you said about comparing these schools one to another, given that so many of them are dealing with students at different levels and with different problems. I wanted to ask, though, about the data that we are collecting. Is there a way to show if the school's performance is improving over time? And do we have that? Are there ways that we work with these schools to try and improve the outcomes for our students?
Absolutely.
Okay. Could you say some more about that, please?
I would love to. So thank you for articulating your concern. When I spoke of comparing CBOs, part of what I was speaking of is we often look at our community-based and contract alternative schools as learning labs. So part of what we want to do is learn from one another. You are exactly right, Director Anthony, we have different populations. In the previous years, we had specific contracts with agencies who focused on homeless students. We have a specific contract with programs identify themselves differently as far as their student population. We have some programs that work more with younger students, and we have some programs that work more with older students. So there are absolutely differences. You're absolutely correct. What we do is we meet monthly, and actually in the new contracts, one of the things that we have articulated and illustrated is that we want to create and be really specific about creating our professional development network. So I should also say that Kirsten Plumeau is the current CBO program director, and she is out of town, otherwise she would be here. But one of her tasks in her role will be leading the professional development cycle with the community-based alternative schools. They've done, like in the past year, for example, they've done instructional rounds, they've looked and done different book studies, they've gone and looked at different, at one another's schools to learn and share practice. So there are absolutely ways that as a system and as a contracted alternative school system that the CBOs work together. We also include and invite our CBOs to our instructional leadership as well. Our CBOs have actually led some of our instructional leadership in the past. So it's very much of a district-wide learning environment, and that's the intention.
Do you want me to?
Yep.
And Paul, I'm not sure that I understand it, because yeah, it's hard to compare
talk about the
kids,
growth?
but our job is to educate them, so there are certain things that we're gonna look at, which is achievement in reading and math,
Right.
typically graduation rates, GED completion. I mean, so it makes sense that those are the metrics that we see here.
Let me ask Carla Gay, who was our contracted alternative schools program director for 8 years and is now in charge of our reconnection services, to articulate around the growth. Carla was again instrumental in developing our metrics.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So when we created these, this is the third year of this report. When we created it, it was intended to be a pilot, so it's really in a phase of trying to figure out what are the right metrics. We brought together representatives from the state, we brought together workforce development, and we brought together many representatives from the alternative schools themselves, as well as our own research and evaluation folks and some other research folks with whom we were contracting at the time. One of the things that we talked about is this, that we do have a variety of students in these programs, and the students enroll for varying lengths of time depending on what's going on. So what we wanted to do was to figure out a minimum standard of what we would want for all students, recognizing that students enroll for different lengths of time. So the design of this, and if you look at this sheet right here with the yellow, the third column, it really describes the inclusion criteria, and you'll see that at a minimum for student, its length of enrollment is a huge variable when you talk about skill growth, for example. So when you have a student who's homeless, who's only doing a drop-in, they didn't actually get included in the denominator of this because we recognize that we wouldn't expect them to make skill growth if they were enrolled for fewer than 30 days because they're homeless and they're in transit. But the whole group together was intended to show a bigger picture of the organization and the school as a whole, recognizing that not any one of the metrics can stand alone. The other things that we acknowledged as a group was that we were really kind of pioneers in this work, and that there's a lot more to do to figure out how to accurately represent students who have been out of school for an average of 11 weeks, as you saw, and who have struggled in a variety of things. I'm involved annually on a alternative accountability policy forum, and I'm sit on as one of the planners of that forum nationally to really think through with other statisticians and people who are concerned for student populations such as the students represented here. How do we think? Nobody's really, we don't have a great answer, but it's part of the process of trying to more accurately represent the work of these students. And then finally, I will say one of the acknowledgments was that we're actually asking a great deal from our contracted programs with regard to measurement that we do not ask of our comprehensive schools. So when we ask for growth metrics around academics, we do not expect that of anybody else in our comprehensive high schools. And I'm not suggesting one way or another, but I'm saying we have a higher threshold of measuring quality for these programs, arguably, than we do elsewhere. And so we've got some real work to do as a system to talk about how we inform that, how we also then learn academically from what's happening that's going on really well in our comprehensive neighborhood high schools, and how do we share that through our professional development opportunities with our alternatives. So I think what we know is that we need to have more of a synergy between, not to use an overused term, between everyone, but that we also hold a high threshold of expectation for these programs.
Thank you.
I have another, sorry,
What?
quick comment. Two things that as you're, well, first of all, I think it's alarming that we're not being able to show, the growth at all schools. I mean, we need good data to know how we're doing.
Yeah, and I want to
our
just
feedback, and I think we do.
Clarify, we do annually, it's not in a 45-day window. So I should be clarifying of that. The ways in which we measure growth are very different.
And then two things just to think about, because as I look at the population of the learners in these schools, often there are kids that are on IEPs, that are special education and English learners. So part of that accountability, the metrics, should have percentage of growth of one level, or just looking at the growth of English language proficiency, and then how about something of kids meeting IEP goals, or I mean, I think there's some thinking around how you're really inclusive and looking at all of the needs, because we know that if they're not growing in their language proficiency, English learners, it's really hard for their academics to grow. So that would be something to target.
For sure. And I when we did measurements prior to this, we had produced a packet of report about every program that really nobody read because the programs found it so deep, and it segregated it. So part of the intention is we have a lot of data beneath this that we can disaggregate in a variety of ways, but this is really a cover sheet for every program so that it makes it something that you can actually look at and try to get your understand. And it should, good data should really help you ask more questions. And that's really what it should do. Oh, I wonder about if you disaggregate this data, what that looks like. That's really the intent, is to get people to ask more questions.
No?
Pam.
Okay, great. Karina, will you walk me through this chart that's got the yellow on it? Because I'm looking, I look across the metric, that's what it's called, right? The description of what it is. Inclusion criteria, that's who you're looking at, right? You're not gonna do
Right.
people outside of that. And then the targets. But where is what happened? So is the target what happened? Is that the?
No, so the target is your numerator, and your denominator is the inclusion criteria, and then what happened is on the back of this. So this is really definitions. This is not the data itself. This just explains how we got to the data. The data itself is the report, and this is the 2-page report card.
So for instance, so to use one example, Pam,
Right.
so for instance, in the top column, when it says MAP scores 3-point gain,
Yes.
so that's our inclusion criteria. So that's what Carla meant when she said that's the denominator.
Right.
So then we're gonna look at how many of our students in a school or alternative school-wide met the inclusion criteria.
The target.
The target, I'm sorry. So if we look at that for skill growth, with CASAS, 58% met, or with MAP, sorry, 54% met that criteria. So 54% of our students made 3-point gains in the MAP growth.
What were you on?
The first one,
And this one right here.
PBS alternative, is that what it is?
Yeah.
So and actually part of why we have the metrics on after every single, and I'm sure you summed through this and thought, here we go again with the criteria, because I just want, that's the context with which to read the graph.
Yep.
Do you want me to do it again?
No, I just need time to go through every one of them now.
Okay, got it.
I got it. Thank you very much.
So would you like me to just talk about the other pieces that are in the packet and just share with you what I've included? Would that be helpful? Okay. All right, so here is the alternative accountability framework, both for the alternative school system and then for each school. We have, there's just each of our schools and their contract. One of the things we added that's different than what you got from in your a notice of the board meeting, what was on the business agenda, was how many student slots that was. So for each school, it'll say, if people are curious, how many student slots are, because you can, it's $8,515 per student, but how many students does that? So we did the math for folks. So for each school, what does that equate to when we're working with the schools that went through the RFP? Then I think two important pieces of information are the Portland Public Schools 4- and 5-year completion rate, the graph, the bar graph, both for our high school graduation rate and for our completion rate.
It's at the very back.
It's at the very back. Thank you, Pam. So one of the things that I'll just say for context that we hear often is that how are our alternative schools helping? Or how do our alternative schools add to the sum of our gain as a district? And so this is a measurement that our systems planning and performance colleagues identified that for every year since, and they don't have the current year that we just finished, so the last year we have is 14-15, and that's the same for the alternative accountability framework, because of course we also have students and summer scholars and other things. Hopefully we'll get some more students across the line before the end of, or August 5th, summer scholars ends. So if we look at our graduation rate for every year from 9-10, or from 10-11 to 14-15, students whose last school was in a CBO raised, those students completing, raised our district graduation rate by 2 points in our 4-year rate. For those students for whom CBOs was their last school enrollment, or DART, our Day in Residential Treatment School, which we have a handful of graduates, but it's really predominantly our CBOs, it raises our 5-year rate by 3%, and that's been consistent the last 5 years. What's has more variation is our completion rate. So if you look on the second sheet, it varies over the last 5 years, raising our our district's completion rate between, I have to make sure I'm looking at the right form, between 4% and anywhere to 12%. So our completion rate includes our GED, and our completion rate includes our modified diplomas. But that's really the raw numbers of our schools matter, alternative schools matter. One of the things that we've been able to do, and I can share with you that we're still pulling metrics for this school year, but we have 300, and as of today, we have 310 completers this year. Over the last, graduation and completions. Over the last 3 years, we have 948 students, and we're still gathering our data, and I hesitate saying that because it's June, but if people ask me, does it matter? It matters. We have, so what you see in the alternative accountability framework, I'll just go back to that, is for the last year that we had 183 seniors graduate with diplomas, and we had 84 students graduate with the new GED. So we had, out of previous year, 267 completers. And that was, I think we've added, and yeah.
Okay, any
And,
other?
And the overall completion rate, so folks that pass the GED, Carla just wonderfully pointed out, in that bottom corner, it says 313 students.
So you went through an RFP process.
Correct.
And there was a group that reviewed all of the applications. Can you just tell us, I would prefer not to come back. I would prefer to be able to vote on these tonight. Can you give us information about what that group looked at and what thresholds they held and those kinds of things that determined that these would all be excellent places for our students to be?
So part of what, and Carla can speak to this as well, but part of what that group looked at was all of our metrics. So it was organizations who bought into, this is the accountability framework that we're using. So if you want to come and have a contract with Portland Public Schools, this is the framework from which we operate. And as far as our contract compliance, looking at the measures and the metrics within our contracts, and our site visits and our ongoing work. So certainly, at a minimum, part of what we do is we meet statute. So there's a variety of guidance from ODE and from state statute that talks about private alternative schools, and that was certainly articulated in the RFP, as well as what we expect as a district. You want to say more specifics? Do you have more specifics? So.
No, I'm looking to you for the specifics.
Okay. So we have we have what we have had for a long time, which are deliverables that are required at the beginning of the year. We have mid-year deliverables. We have end-year deliverables. We have site visits. We have an annual site visit and an annual review of each school as is dictated by statute.
And those are all included, and when you're reviewing the RFP, all of the results from all of those as well?
They're public, yeah. One of the things that I would say is different about this time around is we did use the segmentation analysis to try to help us figure out the size and location of where we needed programs to be. And we still have work to do, but what I would say that the biggest shift is that we recognize that that running a full high school is expensive. And to have really tiny contracts and expect them to meet the same outcomes as a large contract is to Director Anthony's point, is really, you start to say it's an apples to oranges situation. So we set a minimum threshold for number of students with some variation based on the type of program, but we really recognized that you need to be able to hire enough qualified licensed staff to really teach the minimum core content area. And so we said that we wanted about 50, and give or take, if you serve mostly special ed students or mostly ELL students, then that 50 could end up being a few smaller number of kids because you're paying at a greater rate.
Right.
But the total amount of slots should equate to enough dollars to really have to meet the expectations that the district has to run a school. And if they can't, if we don't have the ethical ability to pay them at a rate that they can run a school, then we really need to rethink what kind of a contract is it. But if it's a school-based contract, a private alternative school, then we had to really, so I would say that was one of them. The other thing that the segmentation analysis told us is what we already know, which is our demographics for the student population are largely in on the east side and outer southeast, and so how could we prioritize programming that allows to serve the student population where they live?
Right.
And
So
I would just add two things. So just adding on what Carla said, so we did specific to geography. So one of the things you will see that came out of this that is before you tonight is you will see 70 more slots, students to be served by Rosemary Anderson High School, who has agreed to open and start working with our students in Southeast Portland in direct alignment with what was requested in the RFP. The other reason that I'll say that the guidelines that you'll see around this RFP complementing what Carla just said is because one of the things that we've witnessed, and you all have been part of this and witnessed this over the last few years, is we've had 3 community-based alternative schools stop doing business and go out of business. And part of what we want to do is what we definitely don't want to do is have to work with kids mid-year if their school's closing. Like, that's the worst case scenario. And so what we did is build in assurances with regard to size and geography and a whole variety of things as best we could to predict otherwise.
Well, just like the students who attend these schools are very unique, so are the schools themselves. And so what I'm really looking for from you, and I think that you're making me feel pretty comfortable, is that you have done a thorough review of each of these schools against metrics that we have to determine that they're right for our students, that they fit our unique group of students. And I appreciate the variety of alternatives that we have because of that uniqueness of our students. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm comfortable now.
Thank you, Pam. Paul?
A couple of questions. First of all, do you have the disaggregated data on student demographics?
Yeah. So you'll see it in the
Pie chart.
in the pie chart of every school. We disaggregate every school by race, and we do it in the overall as our alternative system as well.
Okay. The other question is a little more general. I hate to pick on any one school, but say Helensview High School. It's a good example. The data is, well, for many of these, why is so much data missing? Having asked that, I do have to say, the data that Helensview has on school connections is very impressive, given what the issues Helensview is dealing with.
Right.
But that's all there is.
So there are a few schools on the report card that are not contracted alternative schools, and Helensview is one of them. They are through the MESD. As such, because they are run through the MESD, how our instance of synergy works, we cannot directly pull data from MESD run schools, but we do have students there. Helensview opted into this they have a completely different relationship with us, but we said if you're gonna have that relationship, we really want data. Then they have a new principal this year who is working to get them onto Synergy so that we can pull the data and actually have them be aligned with everybody else. But that's been a historical challenge of the two agencies, really.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
I was going to try and answer Julie's question and comment, which I thought was a good one. For me, the difference in all of these situations is that one is contracted out and one is with in-house. I think we need to do a study, not an audit, not a scary thing where we're thinking of getting rid of people, but we need to do a study to make sure that we're spending our money well for all these contracts. Now, I reviewed contracts where we were paying people, literally, this is not the phony one that keeps coming up on Facebook. It wasn't Ray Leary, it was, we were paying somebody to come into our school district $1,000 an hour to do a 6-hour PD, and we were paying him $1,000 an hour. We had another one where we were, yes, that's true, I'll send it to you. It is absolutely true, yeah.
No, I
And
agree.
another one, $677 an hour. Other one, $500 an hour. And we have contracts all over the place. We decide we're going to do a contract for this or a contract for this, of which a lot of our CBOs, the community-based organizations, are under contract. So if you even look at those, should we be doing all this contracting? How is it? How does it work? I think we need to study the whole thing. And I'm willing to vote on these tonight, not because I think they're perfect, because I don't, but I do think that they're kind of in this second budget cycle. And we're gonna do, hopefully, we will do, in the next year, we will do a budget that is built from the classroom out. And one of the places you go out is into the CBOs. Do we need them? And we need to look at them. And I don't mean data-wise. I think the data's fine. I don't have a big problem with it, but generally we have way too much. What we need to look at is what are we actually doing in those schools. It's nice to look at outcomes, but outcomes don't really tell you what you're doing. It doesn't tell you about the children who came forward, the older students who came forward tonight. They are a little blip. But what are we actually doing? Are we doing a lot of that? Are we making, what is the difference, for instance, between NAIA and our own Indian education department? We give a lot more money to NAIA than we give to our own Indian education department. Is that the proper balance? Maybe the balance should be 50-50. Maybe it should be this or that. We haven't looked for so long, and one of the reasons we haven't looked, in my opinion, is because if you try to look, people kick you in the teeth. And it's, I don't mind getting kicked in the teeth, it's fine, you know, but if you try and look, should not be a reason for anything other than let's take a look and see what all these contracts are and how the contracts work, and look at the whole contractual thing. Not for the contracts, I think the work that Youssef has done, and Paul Anthony and Mike Rosen looking at the contracts, I think that's wonderful. I look at a contract and go, yeah, I could tell you I'm done. But we need to look at all these contracts and how they fit into our system, and are they necessary, are they not? And so I'm willing to vote for these with the caveat that we say we are going to look at all our contracts as a group and take a look. So something like NAIA, yeah, that's good. It's doing this good work. We look at it, we see it. But our Indian Education project, Indian Education is doing this work. What should be the balance? We look at that, and we do that throughout. And we don't look based on the data. We look based on what they are doing and making an assessment educationally, which is a lot more important to me than the data. In the end. Now, the data is helpful and would be part of that study, but the study needs to go beyond the data. Like when you take a lot of these alternative programs and say, oh, geez, you don't have your graduation rate up as high as well, yeah, of course not. Of course not. These are totally different children who come with totally different backgrounds, who come with totally different everything. And so I think we should do that as a board, in which case we would just commit to doing that in this next year, putting together that study and studying and come forward with a big summary and looking at all of our contracts. For instance, those contracts I was mentioning are probably ones that come out of the principals' consolidated budgets. Should we be contracting out of the principals' consolidated budgets for $1,000 an hour for people? Is that a good way to spend our money? We need to look at that. I don't know how to do that. I'd be willing to have the board make I'd be glad to make a resolution or make a resolution that we bring to the board next meeting. And if there's board members who would support that type of a thing, I'd be glad to do that.
Sounds like it's a good place for the budget and operations.
Yeah, but they don't have the time. That is would be a huge study. They wouldn't have time to just do it there, but they could do it through there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Okay, so, anybody else? Sounds like, thank you for.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
answering those questions and the work you do.
Karina, can I ask you one question? Steve
Sure.
brought up the NAEA and the Indian education. Isn't Indian education a federal program, federal money?
Correct.
Totally not out of our general fund?
So Indian
Yeah.
education is a federally funded program. They actually just changed from, the feds just changed them from Title VII, actually now they're Title VI.
That's what I thought.
And one of the differences I would just say, one of the differences I would say is with regard to what we brought before you tonight, is NAEA is a high school diploma program and Indian education is not. So there are
Exactly.
some clear differences.
But it's not a total federal program. We give them money.
Correct.
For part of their program is our program, and it's a different type of program, but they both, NAEA theoretically, even though they
Right.
don't exactly, serve Native American children from Confederate tribes, I guess. But our Indian education program, being a federal fund, does do that. So how that money should be balanced out is really a pretty good question. Maybe we should be more here or there. That's what I'm saying we need to look at.
Right.
Okay. I realize that there are potentially some testimony that we forgot. So, on this business agenda item, Susan, do we have testimony?
I have a list of 5.
Okay.
Our first 2 speakers would be Tom Desjardins and Andrea Cruz.
That was very helpful, thanks.
They waited patiently.
School Board Directors and Superintendent Smith, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the contracting community-based organizations serving Portland Public Schools. My name is Tom Desjardins, and I have been the Executive Director at Mount Scott Learning Center for the past 12 years. Prior to that, I was the Communications Coordinator for Salem-Keizer Public Schools for 9 years, and also was the Director of that district's charter high school for 4 years. During these 25 years of working in public education and another 12 in the private sector, I have become well aware of the need for quality education options for students that, for a variety of reasons, have not been successful in the larger traditional school environments. I want to thank Carl and Karina for painting the overall picture of our programs and providing some statistics, but I think it's also important to talk again about the students that we do serve. Our programs serve students who, compared to students in larger traditional schools, are disproportionately older than the typical PPS high school student, significantly behind in credits, living in poverty, impacted by mental health or abuse issues, special education students on individual education plans, in foster care or homeless, involved in the juvenile justice system, on average 2 to 3 years behind in reading and math, impacted by drugs and alcohol, students of color, pregnant or parenting, and living in single-parent households. All of these barriers and many more negatively affect these students' ability to stay and succeed in school, graduate from high school, and be adequately prepared for success after high school. I think part of this was shared earlier. 90% of the students CBO serve have been out of school at one point for 6 weeks or more before enrolling in a CBO program. The CBO programs are recapturing these youth who had either dropped out of school or were on the verge of dropping out. The CBO programs are reconnecting these students to the school district and their education and setting them up for future success. How do the CBO programs achieve this? How do we achieve this? We provide a flexible and responsible student-centered model that many students and families need in order to stay engaged in school. We provide personalized and differentiated instruction to meet students where they are. We fundraise a significant portion of our budgets and leverage a variety of resources and community partnerships in order to meet the high needs of our student populations. We provide creative and innovative strategies for inside and outside the classroom, such as Open School's highly successful Step Up program, Portland Youth Builders Career Technical program, Portland Community College's Gateway to College program, and the CBO-generated High School Graduation Initiative, a 5-year federal grant that brought in millions of additional dollars to the district to support academic priority students. We do all this and much more in close collaboration, alignment, partnership with the school district. And the demand for our services continues to grow as many of our programs are already at capacity for this fall. In closing, on behalf of the contracted community-based programs, thank you for your support and your commitment to the students we serve. Together, we are making a difference.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Cruz. I'm talking for Open Meadows, or Open School North. They've just changed the name. My son went to PPS, and after a long battle, a lawsuit, and still continued failed IEP instruction, we actually ended up pulling Tanner out of Portland Public Schools his 4th and 5th grade year. I was at a loss, had no idea what I was going to do with him. And then I remembered that Open was still around from even when I was a kid. Called him up, got him enrolled. The first year, Tanner entered 6th grade at a 3rd grade reading, math, and writing level. Tanner pushed every day, every button he could to get sent home. Never worked. They never, ever gave up on him. By the end of his 6th grade year, Tanner was up to 6th grade level. 3 grade levels in 1 year because of this school and their staff and their dedication. Tanner continued to just make amazing strides, 7th grade, jumping 3 more grade levels on his reading, writing, and math. Graduated from 8th grade. Unbelievable. Never thought that would happen. Tanner starting his junior year at Roosevelt. He is on the honor roll. He is a football player. He wants to be an engineer and go to Oregon State. Is that the Beavers?
Yep.
So when it came time for my daughter to get into middle school, there was no choice. It was open. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Their programs are unbelievable. I have seen miracle after miracle after miracle, not just with my kid, but with many children at that school. It's an amazing school.
Thank you
so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Get up.
Next, we have Andrew Mason and Michael Navarro.
It's a good story. Thanks, Andrea. Thank you all for your time and your dedication. It's not the city's most favorite job. I appreciate what you're doing. Andrew Mason, Executive Director with Open School, and I want to do a little bit of background to support both what Andrea just told you about her experience with Open School, but also Carl, who came up and spoke here earlier. And the only thing I want to say about Carl is that we got a goal of 40-40-20 in this state. That means 100% of our students are going to graduate. That's our goal. That means all of our students are going to graduate. That means that Andrea's child is going to graduate, and it means Carl, who had an experience in a school where he felt no sense of belonging, needs to graduate. And we can't have a one-size-fit-all program, and we know that, but what does that ultimately mean when we're looking at a graduation rate of 72%? And so our focus, as we all know, in the CBOs is to serve that other 25%. Carl promoted from middle school this year, and at that middle school promotion, as Oregon Springs are wont to do, stood up, this was my thing, and just hollered out on Lombard and said, "I'm gay!" at a rainbow that he saw in the sky. And it was a sense of safety and belonging that that students need in order to be able to learn. and exactly the kind of environment you need to be able to provide so that students can jump up and holler that out. And I just want to say, we are your own schools. We certainly view ourselves as being your own schools because these are your own students. What do they look like? 70% of the students at Open School North were in poverty by free and reduced lunch. 50% of them were special education students. Do I need to repeat that? 50% of them were special education students. 60% of them were students of color. 24% are Title X homeless or at risk of losing their home. 1/4. And 78% were deemed at risk of, at high risk of dropping out. That's this year's numbers, and so the 14-15 numbers may be slightly different compared to, that by a couple of percentage points. What does doing this kind of belonging for Carl and others do for us? It gets us three grade level increases. In our Step Up program, it gets us innovations there, where we've got a 94% graduation rate for cohorts at Roosevelt High School. And it allows us to leverage the PPS investments. By $1 from PPS, we leverage an additional 50 cents to be able to make these things happen. Small class sizes, individualization, and belonging gets academic results. I think that so 93% of our students in the data I think you're looking at now from the years back were retained in school. 88% of our students last year met or exceeded minimum gains on standardized tests, and students in Open School North, 86% of them the average student passed 86% of their classes. This is good for students who are coming in academically behind, and it's why they get the kind of results in terms of the academic progress that they're making. And I'd like to point out that of the 60% of the students of color, we have no academic achievement gap. There's no racial academic achievement gap. So I think that I'll just offer in closing that as I was walking down Lombard today to go get a burrito on Lombard, a young woman came running out of a dental clinic who was riddled with methamphetamine when she came to Open School 15 years ago. I've only been there for 21 years, but 15 years ago when she was there, riddled with methamphetamines, and she's, and we worked with her and we ended up finding a job. She's been 6 years clean and sober and working for dental clinics. And then one of our Step Up grads is coming now and doing a master's program that we're doing in partnership with the University of Portland. And so the point is not to have our students get smarter and leave the community. The point is, how are they coming back and investing and making it better for the next generations? That's what we're trying to do. And so I hope that we can make a not one-size-fits-all program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Navarro, the principal at Open School North. I think a lot of the people here in the room, and especially the kids and parents in the beginning, really told a lot of the stories of what go on at the CBOs. So I'm not gonna. I think we have great data, and we have a lot of good stories to tell. But what I'm really here to do is to invite every single one of you to come and visit every single one of the CBOs. There's lots of amazing things that happen there on a daily basis, and I am grateful to Karina and Carla for encapsulating all that in data, but to really see it happen is something totally different. I know that I have my guest list here. I have 2 of you who have visited, and I'm waiting for everybody else to come by and see us. So that's just all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have Joel Cisneros.
All right. Good evening. So, good evening, Superintendent Smith and Board. My name is Joel Cisneros, and I'm the Director of School-Based Programs at Latino Network. And I want to start off by saying that we welcome the competitive RFP process, and we welcome, the accountabilities, and so I very much appreciated that discussion earlier. I would like to begin by thanking you for your ongoing commitment to engaging students and families. Your commitment to our partnership as we work on improving students is also commendable and appreciated. Through our partnership, we are able to work with students in grades 7 through 12 and their parents. Our programs for youth include after-school programming, academic case management, college and career preparation, internship opportunities, and service learning, to name a few. Our parent engagement programs help parents learn how to navigate school systems, track their students' progress online, support and foster learning at home, and communicate with their children's teachers. Thank you. Thanks to our partnership, last year we graduated our first cohort of high school seniors, and 93% of those seniors graduated on time and are enrolled in post-secondary education. 100% of our middle school students had one or fewer school absences last year. And over 80% of our parents across our programs report being more involved in their children's education as a result of their participation with us. In closing, we look forward to continuing our partnership with PPS and hope that you will vote to renew the contracts that support this important work for students and families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cisneros?
Sir?
Sir?
I heard applause, so I just walked away.
Oh. Wanted to ask very specifically about the services that are down on the contract for Roosevelt High School. Are those, I believe in the past you've just been providing services for juniors and seniors at Roosevelt. Is that true? And sorry.
In
No.
Escalera?
And is that still true for this coming year, or are you able to expand those?
No,
Sorry. He's new in his position, so
Oh.
there were, right, so I apologize, that's the reason why I'm coming down. My name is Dunya Minu. I work in the Office of Equity and Partnerships. And so at this point, yes, for Roosevelt, we are looking at continuing the Escalera program, which is for 11th and 12th grade, and then also a family engagement component.
so what I do know is that it's called Early Escalera for the 9th and 10th graders, so yeah,
Yep.
we're going to do both.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Much happier.
All right.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
All right, so we will now consider the business agenda, which is the revised resolution 5297 with 4 additional contracts, highlighted in yellow, copy in the back as well. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining. Thank you.
Okay.
And so am I, based upon the idea that we didn't actually come up with, are we going to look at this and look at all the contracts in some sort of study?
Okay.
Until we do, if we get that, then I'll be glad to vote for these.
Okay, and I'm an aye. So the vote passes 4-0 with 2 abstentions
Aye.
and student representative voting aye. Okay. Business agenda approved. Next meeting of the board will be held July 25th. This meeting's adjourned.